Hey everybody, and welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by Trainer Road. We are not joined by our head coach, Chad Zimmerman, this week. It's a holiday week.
Yes.
But instead, we have you, Pete Morris.
Well, I'll take it, right? A slightly less better-looking version of Chad with more hair.
Clif Bar Racing's Pete Morris and Trainer Road's Pete Morris.
Yeah, both.
Thanks for being on, man.
Yeah, this is the best. I love being on here.
It's really good to have you on this week because we're going to talk about things that specifically have to do with you on a bike and you working here. So it's all good stuff. And also our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello. This is the first time we've had a regular podcast without Chad that I can ever remember.
I feel like it might be.
Yeah, it is. We've done interviews, but never a regular one. So no pressure, Pete.
Uh-oh.
Pete's got 17 deep dives. He's ready to go.
I have some things to do, actually.
So this is, like I said, the Trainer Road podcast. And you can submit your questions every week at trainerroad.com/podcast. And I personally go through all of them. I read them, I bookmark them, then we come together in a meeting and we research them. And we come together with some questions that we feel like would be interesting and informative for all of us. We also have a few things to cover this week, but before I get into that, if you are watching this on YouTube, which you should totally do, you can watch it after the fact or join us live. It's usually Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, but this week, because it's a holiday here in the United States, we are one day early. But in this case, you can join us on YouTube, and you can actually ask questions right there, and then afterward we answer a lot of those questions that you submit, which is pretty cool. You can also subscribe to our channel there, you can like it, and that sort of thing helps the podcast a ton if you do that. So we'd really appreciate it if you're listening to this. Go over to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and like this video.
There's 45 or 50 watching right now at the moment and 8 likes. So
it just ticks up as it goes on. So join us. It's a lot of fun to have you all there. Before we go any further, we have an announcement with Trainer Road that we should announce for everybody. It's a pretty exciting day.
Yes, we
Nate,
have
go
our
ahead.
brand new Windows and Mac app has been released. So that was in beta for a while, and it's totally redone. It's about 1 million times cooler and better, but also like you can manage your calendar and do a whole bunch of cool features inside of that. So if you are on the current app today, you open it up and we'll ask you to upgrade. Or if you want to try it again, you're on mobile before, go to trainerroad.com/download.
Yeah, it's awesome. The whole experience is just like, it's top notch. And Pete, you were kind of the man behind the wheel in terms of the project.
It was really cool. Pretty much took everybody here at Trainer Road, which was awesome. But yeah, it's so clean. It's so fast. It feels really good. It's so snappy. We've been riding it. I mean, I haven't ridden mobile in months now, pretty much, which is really satisfying. It's awesome. Everybody go take a look, even if you just enjoy looking at it.
It's pretty.
It's pretty.
Yeah, it's awesome. So you can check that out, and we'd appreciate it if you do. If you head over to, if you're listening to this and you're not a Trainer Road user, we encourage you to try it. It does make you faster. At least that's our promise. So getting into Carson City Off-Road, because that happened in our backyard here last week.
Which is so cool again.
Yeah, super awesome. It was great to see so many of you. So I did the 35 this year, coming off of the 3-week sinus infection and everything else. I thought maybe it's not a good idea to go into the 50 and go ham. Instead, I did the 35, and I went really easy with a friend, and it was his all-out pace, but it was a really easy pace for me, and I got to meet so many people.
Throwing some shade.
Yeah.
That's on Steve.
You're not going to mention who that friend was, are you?
Steve. We love you, Steve. But it was so much fun because I got to see so many people that I usually don't see at these races, right? So it was like
More shade for all of you.
No, don't get a shade.
I usually don't see him because they're so far behind me.
No, man. Okay, I'm going to step back. I
No,
apologize.
he's a nice guy. We understand what you mean.
Yeah, because it's usually like, I'm like, you've mentioned this before. Before a race, I'm in my zone.
Yeah.
I'm hyper-focused. And then I usually race really hard, and I don't really talk to people. And if they talk to me, I just kind of keep going. And in this case, it was very conversational, and it was really fun.
90 minutes before the race, through the race, till the finish line, then you're back to regular John.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, so it was really fun. We got to like carry on conversations while going up the climbs. Aid stations, there were a bunch of you. It was really cool. So thanks for coming up and saying hi, and it was really fun. And Pete, you were up there. You
I was up there. I was at a couple aid stations, first and second one, and I rode some sections. Numerous people came up to me and talked to me. It was super fun. Everybody was having a blast. Not that I don't. Usually I hang out at the back or further behind you in these races. So everybody's having a little more fun, but hanging out the aid station for an hour at a time, you got to hang out with a lot of people who are having a good time and still still racing.
Yep.
But tons of Trainer Road users, tons of people who want to talk about the podcast, tons of people who want to talk about the product.
Yep.
It was really fun.
The day before and the day after, it was serious time for the pros in the Fat Tire Crit. So we are a team sponsor of the Stan's Pivot team, and they won 3 out of 4 races on the weekend, which is really impressive. Super cool. And in the women's backcountry race, the long 50-miler, they got first and second, which is really great. And in the race that they didn't sweep, they still got second. Chloe Woodruff got second, which was really impressive. So you can head over to our YouTube channel, and you can actually see we have onboard race analysis with GoPros that we've done with Sofia Gomez Villafane, which that one, super impressive.
Yeah, so she does a break at the very beginning. She attacks, and her power is seriously like my power, which is crazy.
And she's tiny.
She holds like 800 watts for, I don't know, like 5 or 10 seconds. And then settles into like 600 for like another 30. I'm probably exaggerating, but
yeah,
it's amazing.
She's 5'5".
Yeah, and what, 118?
118. So 118 pounds.
But I mean, I think she gets up to
Super
900
impressive.
watts on her doing the
initial snap
to create a breakaway.
And then she goes into the turn, and when we were watching it live, when I was watching it beforehand taking notes, I was like, okay, yeah, she did a hard effort. She's probably going to settle in around, maybe 400. Nope, she goes back up to 800.
I thought she was going to sell around like 250 or something. But yeah. Sophia, she needs to do, I think, road racing. She should try it.
Like a crit racer, track sprinter sort of effort.
Or road. She can do long stuff too.
Oh, yeah. That's why she's doing mountain biking, because it's that plus fun.
She could get into any breakaway. She can bridge to a breakaway. And I think at like 1K to go, she'd be really...
Yeah.
Even with that power, like at that weight, she could probably sprint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She does have a sprint.
Excellent handling too.
Yeah.
She could be a killer road racer or crit racer.
She's a killer mountain biker. I think that's like the pinnacle for her. You know what I mean? Like,
I know, but
yeah.
I just want to see it happen.
Go see her dominate.
Yeah, you should check out this video if you haven't. So it's on there, and it's called How to Race as a Team, because they were perfectly, basically, like, she went hard, and she was not planning on getting on a solo break that would lasted almost the entire race, but her goal was to go hard and then make people chase, and then her teammates were just going to latch on, and then once she got caught, they would attack, right? And just rinse and repeat with her 2 teammates.
Can we talk about that strategy for a second?
For sure.
Because I think it needs more talk, because you can do it wrong, where you just tire yourself out.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so I'm going to say it, Pete, then you correct all the things I say wrong. Okay?
Okay, let's try it. Yeah.
Okay, so when you do the first attack, it's always better if it's a little bit slower. And whoever is attacking, if they can come from behind, so they can get more speed. And why that is because instead of doing like birding a match from a sprint off the front, you can kind of ramp it up slowly, and it doesn't hurt as much. But then a reaction from the field, it kind of hurts everybody because they accelerate so fast.
Yeah, it's best not to be that second wheel.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you want people to fill in. So if you're a teammate and there is that acceleration, let a couple people fill in ahead of you, so your acceleration is easier too.
You're doing great so far.
Okay.
Keep it going.
Yeah.
Now, if they don't accelerate, like there is no reaction, what's really helpful then is for your teammates to get to the front right at a tempo. Not hard, but a tempo. Mike Spikes, we talked about this, does a great job at this. And at least in the lower categories, this doesn't really work in the upper categories.
Yeah.
People won't realize that there's a jersey up the road that's yours, and you're at the front with the jersey.
Totally.
And they'll just sit in your draft, and that could give you an extra 10 seconds on a lap, 20 seconds.
Can I interject on that?
Yeah.
So if you watch, we have another video with Keegan, and you'll see the giant factory off-road team doing that very thing and doing a great job of it.
Yep.
Tristan Ewell is a very good crit racer.
He's a super good crit racer.
And you'll see him he'll even like burn a bit of a match, not really a match, but he'll even go a little hard to roll to the front before a turn. And then he'll take the ideal line in the turn and then just kind of, and it's not dangerous, right? He's not like cutting in front of everybody. He just rolls to the front, then kind of goes slow and takes a bad line in the turn. Then everybody has to slow down a bit, and then they have to accelerate. And then he just, once again, like you said, when everybody accelerates around him, it's like he just lets everybody fill in. Then he doesn't have to re-accelerate.
What you do is you smooth out your whole race by not doing that when you have teammates up too. So then when that happens, the key is you don't go too slow.
Yeah.
If you go too slow, they'll come around you hard.
Exactly. And another good way, if there's a lot of battling to be at the front, you can be third or fourth wheel, and you can kind of be a barrier between people who could work. So if 2 people are working on the front, they'll end up, they don't want to do all the chasing themselves. And if nobody is coming around you to help them, that kind of disrupts things too.
Another one at the front, I did this for both of you guys. So if there is a chase, let's say it's single file, and there's a corner or something, and you're, say, second or third wheel, just let that gap open. And you let it open, and especially if it's going really hard and it gets to 3 or 4 bike lengths, people will yell at you.
Yeah.
And it matters who's in front of you because they might bridge.
Yeah.
If you don't want them to, like if it's a really good sprinter, you probably want to stay there. But if not, you just let that open. The breakaway has now happened.
Yep. Exactly.
That's huge too, letting gaps open. And Mike's Bikes is really good at that too, letting gaps open.
Yeah.
And it's annoying.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
It's annoying. That's why you know it's a good race tactic, right? When you're like, it's annoying.
You'll see a small detail that I picked out that Chloe Woodruff did really well in this race when you're watching Sophia's footage is when Sophia gets caught, which spoiler alert, but when she gets caught, and you'll be surprised at how long it takes, you'll see everybody, and it's Kate Courtney, world champion. You've got Rose Grant, current marathon national champion. You've got Catherine Pendrell, previous world champion and just absolute legend, and Chloe Woodruff, like really fast athletes, Ellen Noble, so like really fast ones. And you'll see Chloe kind of watching out of the corner of her eye, waiting for Kate Courtney to look over. And as soon as she looks over, she snaps. And that's when she does her counterattack. It's like perfectly timed.
Sneaky.
Yeah, because she basically is like, I know that these are the athletes we want to watch, and this is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
It's the perfect time because they get caught. She was kind of toward the front, so she didn't just go off the front and counter. She just recycled back in, waited till they weren't looking, and then went again. It's cool.
Going off the front does work if the second wheel is your teammate.
Yep.
Then you can kind of just like go away, and then someone opens the gap.
You did that for me a few weeks ago, I think.
Yep, you just went, and I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I even made like I don't know if I got out of the saddle, but I made it look like I was going after you.
Sold it.
Yeah. I don't know if that helped or not, but okay, so let's say one person's off the front and they are pulling, and always let somebody else pull. I think last week, and we both raced, and a teammate tried to bridge to his teammate and just ended up pulling the whole field. So don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Like shut down the own brake.
Right.
So I think the next thing is when you counter, so the next person does, again, from the back, do it almost into when there's like, where you can use your other teammate as a draft. So you come by people, draft by that person, and slingshot around.
Yeah.
Don't do is the person off the front, let's say it's Jonathan, gets caught, you wait 90 seconds because everyone's going to be fresh because you're like, oh, I'm tired too. But everyone's tired. What you want to do by doing this is the peloton gives up on the chase, and then you can solo at like sweet spot and still win.
That's why it's so important to be not. I mean, there is benefit to being second wheel sometimes if it's somebody you really want to mark. But at the same time, it's so helpful to be 5-7 wheels back.
10 wheels back,
because I feel like the biggest thing with a counterattack is differential of speed, because you really need to make them work hard to try to catch you. And that's something you're so good at, Pete.
Yeah, I would say one thing is try to figure out when they're going to catch your teammate. So you want to know half a lap beforehand, or long enough that you can get yourself into position, get ready to attack to pass them, like Nate said. And not only are you using them for a draft, but they're also going to kind of disrupt the peloton behind you.
Yeah.
And the other part of this is they get a rest if you counterattack, because they can kind of sit up and trickle through the field as everybody else does the work, and then they're not kind of hammered again when someone else attacks, and they're like, it's all those things.
When they get back on, they don't have to be at the front of the race. They go all the way to the back again. And this too is very course dependent. So on Air Center, it's huge.
Air Center is a local criterium. You can see it in videos we've done on race analysis.
Very wide roads, simple corners. If it's like this threaded single,
kind of like Carson,
or if it's like hilly, these strategies are a little bit different. For where you're positioned. You don't want to be hanging out the back if it's hilly because gaps will open and stuff. Or if it's single file and this technical, you could be gaps. But for a 4-corner crit, I think that's how you do it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and basic road races, right?
Yeah,
all these tactics still apply.
Yeah. It's really interesting. You'll also see in some cases where like their teammates about to get caught, and the field kind of eases up, but let's say that you, Pete, are in the back and I'm up at the front, right? So you're back with the pack. You can tell that I'm going to get caught. It's inevitable. It's going to happen very soon. Yeah. But the field kind of eases up, maybe to hang me out to dry. Sometimes you'll see, in this case, you would attack to get up to me and bridge over the top of me to still put another one of our riders up at the front if they're going to sit. It's really dynamic, and you'll see all of these tactics employed in these race analysis videos.
Yep.
And between Sophia and Keegan's video, which is super impressive, he raced very patiently, which he's a patient person, but it's not his style to race so patiently because he kind of can race how he wants, and it ends up working out.
Yeah, he's just too strong.
Yeah, but he raced really patiently and was smart in this one, so you can learn a ton from that. But those 2 race analysis videos, I feel like, are super, super helpful.
It was really fun to watch those.
So that if you are racing against that tactic, here's my opinion. You tell me the right answer, Pete. Is I feel like so you're a solo rider and you have teams doing this, you got to go with one of the people that goes on that break, because then you're like leveraging the other team's tactics.
Yep.
And this is tough, is like how deep do you want to go? Like how committed do you want to go? Because you can't go with everyone.
Right.
That'll be too much.
You have to gamble. You have to place your bets.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah.
You know?
And pick the right person to go with, right? Like there's almost always a sacrificial rider that goes at early, but sometimes they send their strongest guy early. And that's a great, it works more often than the second or third. Well, it doesn't work that often, but just pay attention to who's going and, if they're winning races or they're a strong guy. And if the team is organized, it almost doesn't matter who gets up the road because they'll employ such good tactics in the field that they can shut everything down.
And if there's, like in Masters racing, in my experience in Northern California, total team tactics. But if there's 3 or 4 of the jerseys of the top teams, the race is pretty much over.
Yep.
The whole peloton doesn't chase because
if they're represented in the front, then
there's like 25 teammates in the peloton,
Yeah.
and they're not doing any work.
Right.
Yeah.
And so the single riders really have to get together, and that really doesn't usually happen because they're still going 22 or something.
Yeah.
They feel like they're going fast.
And the guys who would be able to chase that back are in the move.
Yep.
Right? They always make it. And then the guys who are just racing to race aren't going to do any work to pull back for 6th place,
Yeah.
we also have a crit coming up, or I should say the race has already happened, but we're working on the race analysis. It's going to be a dynamic one because we're going to bounce between 3 different riders, all 3 of us. A recent Air Center crit where we kind of did all of these things at one point or another. You got up the road early.
Yep.
We weren't necessarily racing for Pete, but I think both of us had a soft spot because we were both like, that's good. Pete's up the road.
I was racing like a teammate for you.
Yeah. And then after that, Nate and I got to race as a team for the rest of the race, and it's dynamic and super interesting. It's pretty cool. So yeah, awesome stuff. Another thing I want to give credit to as well is Keegan won the 50-mile race by 3 minutes, which is a huge margin. Really good job there. And just to give you an idea of what he did, so he weighs 145 pounds, and he did 283 normalized power for 3 hours and 3 minutes with a ton of coasting. Like,
that's crazy for mountain biking.
That's huge. Yeah, that's huge, which is crazy. And he averaged almost 16 miles an hour on that course.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, the mind-bending part is how fast they go up, like the long, steady climbs. It's just like it's like basically what us normal people would do on a road climb of the same, and they just go on mountain bikes that quick.
I can't even do that on a road bike. Like to be totally fair.
What's his FTP?
I think that right now he says he's 380 at sea level, but I feel like he actually might be higher than that.
That's 5.7 watts per kilo. So 145 pounds or 65 kilograms at 380 watt FTP.
I reckon he's closer to 400
That's
than
why
380. Yeah.
Best in the nation, or
that's it. Yeah. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So super impressive. And then Chloe and Rose 1-2'd it all the way to basically to the line, and then Rose Grant got the win. So really super impressive weekend for them, and fun to see all of you. We have a lot of content coming up. Like I said, you can check our YouTube channel and you can see the race analysis that we did with them. Another congratulations to Nick Gibb of Clif Bar Racing, your teammate.
Yes.
He is a paracyclist, and he won 2 national championships this weekend.
Yeah, he defended his road race and got the TT.
And got the TT.
Yeah.
Super impressive.
Yeah, it's rad.
Way to go, Nick. Awesome person. You all should follow him on any sort of like Instagram profile or anything else, because it's really interesting. And that guy is so strong. He's so much faster than I am.
Me too.
Went to team camp and I was like, man, he is so fast. He's a new addition, and he tore my legs off. One last thing too. Want to welcome producer Tucker to the team here. And thank producer Ian, who's with us for so long. Ian's moving on to pursue his career in economics, or in finance, I should say. So, but awesome to have producer Tucker here. So he's handling the stream and all that stuff for all of you. All right, getting into it. This next one, this is from Cristo. I believe that's how you'd say the name. It says, hi, guys. I'm the brand manager for the ABSA Cape Epic and often listen to your podcast. Hey, there we go. I used your platform to get me through winter last year. Thanks. Now we can use it through summer. He has outside workouts.
Exactly.
There we go.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yep. He says,
Question done.
moving on. He says, on the Cape Epic route, the route actually changes every year and is a well-kept secret until it's announced in September. This is referring to last week when we were talking about the fact that we didn't know how similar the route remained year to year. He says, although the route uses a lot of private land that cannot be ridden outside of the event, some sections can be ridden depending on where the route goes in a particular year. Even just riding in the area will help you get used to the riding conditions on the route. And he also says an option would be taking part in the Wines to Wales event that takes place in October. It's a 3-day event and uses sections that has been part of the Cape Epic in the past. And he says, feel free to give him a shout if you have any further questions. We do have questions. So hopefully Cristo's listening to this.
Yes.
Let's go into them, mate.
Well, I don't have questions at the moment
Okay.
about Cape Epic, but I will.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I'll email you directly, hopefully. Or
We did talk about pre-riding a bit on this one and
Yeah.
how you kind of want to go about it.
So this is how I feel about pre-riding. If I want to pre-ride sections that I think I'm going to be limited technically, not because I'm going to memorize those sections, especially when I'm going to do it a year ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
It's to know that where I need to like get my fitness level or maybe my tire choice or my equipment choice.
Or technical level.
Yeah, not technical level. That's pretty much it for me, not the fitness level, because that kind of is what it is.
Right,
I'm
right.
not going to magically be like, oh, I need to be at 5 watts. per
I'll
kilo.
turn it up this year.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of people, when they pre-ride the course, some of it's just like familiarity, like not to have fear on the course. But really, like, if I ride in those conditions and it's like, okay, I need, it's going to be really loose, so I'm going to have a little bit of grippier tire. And then I'll do a couple tech sections that have been in the race before. And if people say this is kind of indicative of what a normal race would be like, and I can ride those tech sections without a lot of difficulty, then I'll be okay. Now there's the week before pre-ride, which is different. And I think Jonathan does this where you're trying to ride for maximum speed, finding the best lines.
You're basically chasing like marginal gains, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to look at the course and see every little bit you can squeeze out of it.
Yeah. And you're
but it's-
memorizing.
And memorizing it. It's not like basically seeing where the benchmark is and where I need to be in relation to that. At that point, I can't change any of that. So instead, I'm just really focusing on marginal gains, basically.
And this is too where in your brain you're like, Jonathan goes back and he visualizes parts of the course.
Yes.
He might stop on the course, go back and take another line. He might play with his air pressure or suspension and do it multiple times. A year out, I don't even know what the course is. None of that stuff matters. In Ironman stuff, all the time, people are like, I need to ride the course. I need to ride the course.
Oh, yeah. We even had the question on that a couple of weeks ago, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I would argue there's no need in Ironman racing at all to do the course.
Right.
Even if there's any sharp turn, like it wouldn't be a sharp road racing turn. Like they put up signs
And
everything.
everything. And they have a
2Ks,
marshal.
right?
Yeah, they have a marshal with a flag
Yeah.
and say, stop here, do
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
If you can ride your bike outside on the road, like you can do it. And then the other stuff is just gearing. Just have enough gears to get up something really steep. If they say there's a 15% grade, oh, that's probably too steep. But if they say there's 8% sustained grade, just make sure you have a compact with a 28 or 32, and you'll probably be okay.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. There really are like different purposes of pre-riding. So in your case, you just want to get to know basically like what level you'll have to perform at.
I just want an
And your
excuse to
equipment.
go to South Africa.
Yeah,
I have a learning event there at the same time.
Yeah, you
that's,
do.
For this entrepreneur organization group I'm in. And I was like, whoa, it's the same time of year. That's
perfect.
So I might as well bring
Yeah.
a bike or rent a. I'll bring a bike because I want to see how my bike performs on that with the tires of my choice.
Smart.
And just see. And
I went to Cape Town last summer, and I would say it's strikingly similar to kind of our area, like Tahoe,
North Star.
North Star, definitely. But yeah, I would definitely go do that.
Yeah. So why not?
Why not? Yeah, exactly.
I would definitely go to South Africa. Yes, please. Gabe's question. He says, hey, guys, first things first, 5 stars. Awesome. And you can rate the podcast on any platform that you use to listen to it. 5 stars, please. And if not, then just let us know what we can do to be better. You can do that at trainerroad.com/podcast. Says, I love the podcast and product. I've been using Trainer Road for about 2 years now, ever since I started cycling competitively. And I've seen some great gains. I'm a 30-year-old Cat 4 rider, 168 pounds with a 302-watt FTP. My A race is on July 13th, the Capital Region Road Race in New York, which that's coming up. It's exciting stuff. It says, which is supposed to be a challenging course. But my question is not about that A race. On July 14th, the next day, my parents want to do an extremely casual team triathlon in Vermont. It consists of a 1.5 mile kayak leg, a 14-mile rolling bike leg, and a 5K run. The expectation right now is that I will do the kayak and bike legs and that my mom will run the 5K. Normally, the day after my A race, I just want to recover and take this as an opportunity to spin my legs, and that should work well as this is an entirely for fun, and he says in quotes, event. However, I looked at last year's results, and there was only one other family team in the mixed gender, mixed age category. It's a very prestigious category there. And I know, he says, and I now have it in my head that if we compete this year, I must do everything I can to destroy them.
They probably won't even show up.
They aren't even there. They didn't even know it was an event. They just were there. They're like, I guess we can do it.
I have my kayak with me. Yeah, sure.
And now this guy just wants to destroy them. It's hilarious. Very cyclist of us, right? He says, so my question is, what can I do both in my recovery and my gear choices in order to maximize my ability to go over the top in this fun triathlon event without damaging myself in the long term? To be clear, the A race is obviously my priority, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my A race for this inconsequential event. But I really, really want to wreck this other family that I've never met and may never end up competing against. For the bike, I will be on a CAD 10 with deep wheels. I can try to borrow some clip-on aero bars from a teammate. Is there anything else I can do to glean some extra speed from this setup? And he says for the kayak portion, well, I haven't kayaked in years and I won't be able to until the day of the event. Thanks for all the advice and keep up the great work. So first things first, I want to cover the recovery thing. He says, what can I do both in my recovery and my gear choices? So post-race recovery.
So there, one, I don't think you're going to have long-term damage to your body. Like you said, what can I do to damage? It's a 14-mile event.
Yeah.
You'll be fine.
Yeah.
And then
you'll probably have DOMs, as we talked about last week from kayaking, but that'll probably be it.
And the road race, if it's a Cat 4 road race, we didn't look up the distance, but probably 60 miles. And a lot of times, challenging course, yes, but sometimes road races aren't that hard.
Yeah,
like,
taxing. Yeah,
like 60 mile race the next day, depending on if you're doing nothing close to consistent training, something like that, it can be hard. But if you're training consistently, you can rebound pretty quick from that.
Yeah. So in general, I wouldn't really worry a ton. You're probably going to feel good. But let's go into the marginal gain details that I love so much.
Yes.
You probably just wake up and take a caffeine pill and smash it.
Yeah.
But okay, so in general, when you exercise, your body has an inflammation response, and that inflammation response is good, and that's where it tells your body it needs to repair these things, and you build stronger, right? So we've heard before about things you can do that blunt that response, that make you feel better, but will probably have impacts on your long-term fitness gains.
In other words, your body won't be able to make a whole lot of adaptations, but you may recover. You may feel better. Within the immediate time frame.
So let's talk about that category first.
Cool.
Things that reduce inflammation quickly that might make it so you don't have long-term performance, though. One is ice baths. Those are shown makes you feel better, but hurts long-term adaptation. Right afterwards, you could do tart cherry juice, pomegranate.
They're antioxidants. Anything rich in antioxidants is what you're going for.
Yep. That could reduce muscle damage so that you could feel better the next day. Fish oil, although fish oil is the one that's a little bit different, that actually has been shown not to blunt adaptations. So do take fish oil.
Fish oil.
Compression.
Compression wear maybe.
I guess we're talking about external stuff. You're talking about things you would ingest.
I don't really know about. It's so tough. I would just do it because their compression socks are cheap and they're trying to measure small gains, like 0.5%.
There has to be some travel involved with this the day of the race. So.
New York to Vermont. So you are traveling. I feel a difference when I use compression socks when traveling around racing. Sure. I don't know what percentage it is, but I feel a difference.
So there's that category. And the number one category is going to be hydration and carbs. For sure. So, and especially during a road race, you might not be touching your bottle as much as normal. You're more you're in the race, right? Instead of training where you're drinking a lot. So, and then lots of carbs. I would do, you've heard me say this before, but a lot of carbs, that's probably going to make you feel of all these things, besides, unless you're dehydrated, the best the next day.
Checking those two boxes, you'll perform the next day for sure.
Yeah. And everything else is, I wouldn't go online and buy like tart cherry juice is expensive or pomegranate extract or go buy some compression socks.
Right. Yeah.
That's pretty much it. What about equipment?
So I think that's the other side of things. So assuming the recovery is good, Going into the triathlon, the things he could do for equipment. What stands out to you first, Pete?
I think the cheapest, best bang for the buck is always your helmet. If you can get it, if you already have an aero road helmet, use it. It's if you have a huge old school vented something, and you can borrow a TT helmet, I guarantee that's free speed. Clip-on bars are iffy. If you ride with them all the time and you're used to them, it's better. But if I put clip-ons on my bike, I go slower.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was the same way at the beginning. That's why the TT stuff is tough, because it's a battle of position and power.
Yep.
And if you're not used to it, some people can be thrown onto a TT bike and they're instantly like 3 miles per hour faster.
Yes.
But like, it's a good point. You're faster on your road bike without clip-ons.
I am.
I think I am too.
Yeah.
You can also, I think, a skin suit, if you have one, this is the day to use it.
Yeah.
That sort of a thing, for sure.
Kayaking in the skin suit. Yeah, for
Yes,
sure.
for sure. Yeah, kayak in the skin suit. I mean, it makes such a difference. When we talked to the folks that specialize in a previous podcast, Super Dave Kazel and Chris Yu, we were talking and we actually asked them about the sleeves, right? And long sleeves versus short sleeves. And the thing that they basically said is, well, the bigger thing you should focus on is if there's a wrinkle, then it's probably slower. So like if you have long sleeves, but it introduces a lot of wrinkles, it's probably slower, right? Really, you just want to get rid of wrinkles and you want it to be wrinkle free or as wrinkle free as possible. The stuff that's, leading edge or in the wind, that sort of a thing. So if you can do a skin suit, usually that's why they're faster, is because they're smaller. They kind of put you in an uncomfortable position, but
curl.
it's yeah, exactly right. But they help with that. I don't think that, I mean, if you really want to chase marginal gains, you can go after like shoe covers and you can go through all this stuff. And with shoe covers, we've talked about this before, but it seems that the general consensus, and I believe this was backed up when we went to aero sports, when we were training at the velodrome. I think that we were talking about the fact that shoe covers that cover your shoe and then tall aero socks above that seem to be the fastest combo.
Yeah. So it was weird. It's like all things aero. It depends. Not all things. Aero helmets are always
faster.
Aero road helmets always faster.
Right.
But yeah, normally I think Jim was his name, right?
Jim.
He liked Velo toes. I think with socks.
Yeah.
And we put Velo toes on Chad, and Chad was like 4 watts slower.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, oh shoot,
it's tricky.
Yeah, it's really tricky.
Yeah.
So it's hard to know if shoe covers are going to be faster in this situation. He might not be able to wear road shoes in the kayak because there might be a run.
Yeah, good point.
So you might want to just skip the covers because you're going to have to do a transition from your kayak to the bike.
Yeah, your 15-mile ride, you'll save a couple seconds
That's
with shoe
right.
covers, so that putting them on is going to take more time than they will save you.
He will have kayaked and then
Yes.
getting straight onto the bike.
Yeah,
So
that's
holding that position in the aero bars when your upper body is completely blown out from kayaking like that, probably not going to be easy either. So it would be better to be in your normal position. So he talks about if he could borrow some deep section wheels, and wheels are said to definitely, or he says he has deep wheels. They definitely help for sure. But one thing I think that another overlooked thing that's, it's a buy, like you have to buy it, but tires, they make a huge difference. I don't know what tires you have on there. If you have gator skins, going to something like the new GP 5000s, for example, would garner you a ton of time.
5000 TL.
TL, yeah.
Yeah, I'll talk about those tires in just a second. But he's doing the road race before. He should have great tires on his bike.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, not gator skins.
Yeah.
So the GP5 or the GP 4000 was like a classic tire, really popular in triathlon.
It's like a benchmark tire.
And it was it's a very old tire. And why people liked it so much is low rolling resistance, but also aerodynamics. And the story that I heard from someone in the industry is they put some extra rubber on the outer edge to have it last longer, and that just made the airfoil come out just a little bit, and it was something magical that
And it worked perfect.
They got better aerodynamics. Yep. And then there was the GP 4000 S2, which improved. And now they did a new line, which is the 5000, GP 5000. And they have the regular GP 5000 and the GP 5000 TL.
Yep.
So bike rolling resistance, bicyclerollingresistance.com, something like that. They have, Tucker, can you put that in the show notes? Bicycle rolling resistance. They have results on just a smooth roll down at different air pressures. So take that as you will. I think there's one that has like a little bit of roughness to it. But the 5000, GP 5000 TL is like a half a watt slower or 1 watt slower than the Corsa Speed G Plus, which is a paper thin tire.
Oh, yeah.
Super fast. I've used that for a long time.
If you breathe like hotly on it, it will flatten.
But really like the benchmark for speed.
Yep.
But then the TL has better rolling, or not better, pretty much the same rolling resistance, but really good grip and puncture protection. It's just a little bit heavier, but that's fine. So that's the tire that I'm using everywhere. It also has a 25, a 28, and a 32. So on our Venges that fit a 32, when we go to Kona, 32 all day long. It's going to be so
nice.
Cadillac, like
nice and comfy.
And I think some of these, like Belgian Waffle Ride, a 32 GP 5000 TL, where it's 90% road or 80% road and then some gravel, that could be awesome too.
It'd be a good setup for sure.
So anyways, I would get that tire.
Yeah. And full on this, we have no association with Continental whatsoever. We just try to find the fast things and then we try to share them.
We choose what we want, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I actually don't even run that tire. I run the S-Works Turbo. And as a result, I have great fear at all times that my tires are just going to fall apart because it's a pretty fragile tire. But man, it runs well.
I would say maybe not fragile, but it's not durable. Like
it's not intentionally made to be durable.
The tread runs down fast, but I would like to see you ride the 5000s because I feel like the grip. You really like the
feel,
the grip and the feel.
You like the grip of the S-Works.
Yeah, the S-Works Turbo feels so good. Like it really predictable.
The 5000 TL has amazing grip too.
Cool. I'll give it a shot.
And I usually can't feel anything. So for me
the
to be able
fact
to
that
feel
you
it,
can
it's
feel
true.
it.
That's a good point. Yeah. Let's move into Dylan's question. I think that we've given him enough, actually, in this case. Yeah,
too much.
Yeah.
Just eat and drink.
Gabe, go destroy that family, as you said.
Let us know too.
Yeah, please. That'll be fun. You can do that actually in the forum on this episode. That would be fun because then everybody else listening to this could know about it. So,
forum.trainerroad.com.
Yep, and just search for episode 210, this episode. Dylan says, I have mountain bike nationals coming up in July. It has a 700-foot steady climb and then a long downhill back. Yep, and I'm also prepping for this. He says, I live in Texas and we have punchy short hills. Should I do a lot of loops to add up to 700 feet or should I not train to climbing at all? So I think there's like a bunch of things to unpack from this because first of all, it's Texas versus high altitude Colorado.
Yeah, it's in Winter Park.
Yeah, so we're 9,000 feet is where we start. I think 8,600 or something like that.
That's higher than Texas.
Yeah, yes, measurably so. Actually, yeah, it is. It is higher than Texas. So there's a lot of other variables to include, but I guess pulling those out temporarily and just talking about the fact that you have a 700-foot climb coming up. So is the best way to train just to do a 700-foot climb? For that, I think that's kind of like the core question because that's a tendency I feel like we'd have.
Everybody has that question.
Yeah,
and I feel like we've answered this before.
Yes,
but we're answering it again because people have asked this question. And maybe we can cut this one out and just send it to people just over and over.
Yeah,
again.
Exactly.
I'll put money behind it for ads. Yeah, we'll just play it all the time.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess thinking about this, I straight out, I don't think that the best way for you to train is to look at it like it's 700 feet, so I need to be able to climb 700 feet.
Yep, that's not what it is. When you're working out, it's an energy system for a certain amount of time, and that translates even more accurately to a wattage for a certain amount of time. So what you need to figure out is, on this race for 700 feet of climb, how long would that be for me, like at race pace, and what kind of wattage would I do? What's the max amount of wattage that I could do for that time?
Yeah, or more directly, what percentage of your threshold that would be, since he's going to be having elevation.
And then, yeah, you're right. That's the next level.
Yep.
And then, can I now repeat that multiple times in training with some kind of rest or stuff in between? And then can I raise that up?
Yeah.
Yep.
And you tweak it so that it's repeatable for training, right? Like you're gonna work a little bit below, at, and a little bit above, right?
Yep, because chances are you'll do 4 or 5 laps. I don't know how many we'll do yet. So and it's a big marker. It seems like in this course, there's not a whole. I could be wrong, and I've ridden this climb before.
I think I have too, actually.
So it's not like after this, there's not a whole lot to the course. It's just kind of like this big climb. And being up at elevation in this case as well, that really makes the climb the feature of the course. And it's going to be something that you really want to make sure that you have trained enough to be able to do well at, and then you execute properly on it.
So this is how I figure out how long, because I do this all the time and I analyze it. Go on Strava, find the segment. On Strava, I'm usually, let's say, I don't really know for sure, but I'm going to guess 20% slower than pros. So I say,
or the top time.
Right? The top time. And if there's like a crazy pro like Phil Guyman or something, I'd throw that one out.
Yeah.
Or I look for other people that are like me that I know. That's the best if I know somebody. But if I don't, I look at that. So I subtract that, and I go, oh, this is kind of my time. Then I'm going to go up. I then look at the results and look for people in my weight area that actually had a power meter, and I need lots of results because sometimes the power numbers are crazy. It'll be a little lightning bolt on desktop if you have power. And
Yep.
I just like, okay, so they did 300 watts for 15 minutes.
And it took them this time.
Yep, and this is their way. At least that's the report. They're probably heavier than that on Strava.
That happens. We always record our weight on the best days, right?
Yeah, and then I know that's my benchmark, or that's like what I need to do. And if I could do more power than that, power to me. Really, though, the power is kind of second. If I just know it's a 7-minute climb,
Yes.
I'm going to figure out my max power that I can do for 7 minutes, and I know I'm going to have to do it 8 times.
Yeah.
Or then I'll do it in a workout 8 times. Like,
And really, like, if you look at it, chances are that falls within a specific, and like for this race, you don't have to worry about repeatability really, especially because you're talking about being up at elevation. So you're not going way over threshold and coming back in. Because if you do that, then your race is basically done. Like you just won't be able to perform very well. So in this case, it's all about, being a 700-foot climb, how long, roughly that's going to take.
repeatability, do you mean like inside of the climb?
Yeah. So I mean, like, you don't have to worry about like surging way over threshold with this climb because it's pretty consistent.
I'm talking about like if you do 5 laps, you're going to have to do whatever your 300 watts.
Yeah, exactly.
5 times.
Yeah. I was just clarifying
Yeah.
that very thing. So, like in this case, I feel like if you look at that and you figure it out, once you figure out roughly what sort of speed you would go up, and then what sort of power that would take. You really want to look at what percentage that is of your threshold, because once again, going up to elevation, and then you can look up, and we have on the episode 208, we talked about elevation, and you can go onto forum.trainerroad.com and you can see that we have a chart in there. We'll throw it into this episode too, so then you can see it. But there are charts that kind of give you a rough ballpark idea of how much you'd have to reduce that power by. But the biggest thing that I feel like you have to pay attention to is you can't just ride by numbers on race day.
Yeah,
And we're deviating a bit from this, but like you have to have the numbers there, because sometimes you need it to push you a little further,
Well,
right?
You can train for the numbers.
And you need
then
to
if you're
train for
racing
them.
for nationals, it's different. You don't stare at your power meter on the climb.
Yeah, you
go
have
with
to.
the front.
You have to go with feel. You know what I mean? And you have to know what your body's doing.
And it is slightly dangerous being nationals and a 700-foot climb. You're going to be tempted to go slightly over. And this is a course and an elevation that will really punish you. Like you said, your race could be over. But there's a fine line between staying with whoever you're competing against, going a little bit deeper than you can, because like from what I can remember, you have a lot of time from that descent afterwards and then around.
Oh yeah.
That you'll feel good enough going into the climb the next time.
Yeah.
But if you really burned everything you had, the next time is going to be rough.
Oh yeah. And another sneaky thing about this is the fact that coming back, you actually have like a 2% drag, 1% drag for a long time. So that's going to, like, you basically climb up, then you descend, and you're still moving far away from the finish line. And then at the bottom of the descent, you're the furthest point away from the finish line. Then you just do like a 2%, 1% drag all the way back.
How far is that section? Do you know?
Yeah, I think that it's somewhere around a mile and a half.
So 5 minutes or something.
Yeah. So the point is, you shouldn't train in Texas just by going to your climbs and trying that out. Instead, you should be looking at what sort of power you need to put out and then working on that.
Yeah, the time.
The time.
For the time.
So this one, for me, if it's let's say it's a 10-minute climb, I would say, okay, I'm going to do 102% threshold repeats for 10 minutes, and I'm going to do those 5 times. The next time I'm going to do them, I'm going to raise it 5 watts, and I'm going to keep doing that until I can repeat that all 5 times.
Yep.
And
Make that your race specific workout.
and that could be on the trainer. That could be on the trainer with some books underneath your tire. That could be out on the road on a flat section. It sounds like you have no probably sustained climbs where you're at for 700 feet. So,
but you might have sustained flats.
yep.
So, that makes it pretty easy too.
And doing it on your mountain bike.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's something to be said for that. Doing it on the bike that you'll be doing, just extra levels of specificity.
Position.
You talked to a famous unnamed pro about racing at elevation.
Yeah. And we were talking about this, and he has a ton of experience, and you've seen him all on TV many times. But he just said, like, the number one rule with elevation is just don't cross the line.
Yeah.
That's
you
it.
Cannot.
Just don't. When you're talking about extreme elevation like that, you just don't cross the line.
And you don't feel that you cross the line until it's too late.
You go, oh no.
Yep. Exactly.
That's
right.
what happened at Leadville, because you still have your anaerobic work capacity. So that kicks in, and then that switches to aerobic really fast. And then you're suddenly like 5 times deeper than you would have been.
Yes.
At sea level.
Yeah, exactly right. So that anaerobic work capacity that you have, that contribution there, can really trick you and put you in a bad spot.
Yep. It's not your friend.
Yeah, exactly. Remember that it's not like your peak power is limited as much as your ability to recover from that is limited.
Yeah, it takes 5 times longer to come back to feeling okay.
And sometimes you just don't even get it back.
And you never get it back. If you go really
in a
deep,
race,
you never get it back.
Yep. Yeah. So it's really, it's tricky. I'm really curious to see how this race shakes out this year. You know what I mean? Like,
it'll be fun.
I feel like, so the last time that we had a national championship at elevation was in Mammoth. And I feel like there was less understanding at that point, not just from, I certainly understand more, but less understanding in general about elevation and power and limits and that sort of stuff. Because at that point, we were still coming off the era where guys, whether it was enhanced or not, were just able to attack nonstop at every tour stage, no matter what, right? And that's just kind of what we thought we needed to race like. But since, then we've seen a totally different form of racing where people, just stick to their limits and try to go to those. So I'm curious to see if we all just kind of like end up just like separating cleanly and from everyone, and it just comes down to power to weight or what. So
what day is nationals?
July 28th, I believe, is the race for me.
You're still going, right?
Yeah, I'm going.
Okay. When do you leave? How long you be there?
I'm gonna go the day before.
Cool.
Yeah. So it's tricky because and I think I'm gonna have to drive out. I don't know, unless I want to rent a car the whole time for a week and a half after that. I don't know. It's going to be tricky. I'm staying up there for the Yeti Tribe Gathering the next weekend, and then Leadville is the one after that.
Oh, you're going to be the whole time?
So I think I might. I'd rather not stay there for over 3 weeks. I'd rather go there, stay there until the Yeti Tribe Gathering, then come home, and then probably fly out with everybody for Leadville.
I can host some podcasts.
So yeah, exactly. It'll be fun. So we'll see how that goes. And I'm very curious to see. I mean, really, it's just a battle of thresholds and weight. That's like basically it, and if your threshold's high enough and your weight's low enough, then you're going to do well. And if it's not, and the hard thing is you can't really fake that one with anaerobic, work capacity or anything else or repeatability like a lot of people can in normal circumstances.
It's not technical?
It doesn't seem like it, but
it's
I
weird
may be
for
wrong.
national championship not to make it technical. Like,
yeah,
that's coming from me too.
Mammoth wasn't that technical until one descent that would it could bite you, I guess, but it wasn't really. I don't know. If you added a lot of speed, it could get tricky, but it wasn't outside of that. And I think this course will be probably similar. From what I've heard from people, I've been talking to people that know the trails very well. It's not very technical. So there's a few tight and windy spots I hear, but that's about it. So it'll be interesting to see. And I'm excited because hopefully they keep it in the same place this year. So then I can get some recon. Then next year I can actually go for a championship. It'll be cool. Soul's question. Recently did a 100-kilometer, 2,000-meter of climbing, non-technical mountain bike race, and the time was about 4 hours. I was happy with the time, and I felt like I ate and drank enough. However, the last 15 kilometers was pure survival mode. I have no power meter nor a bike computer, so it's all purely by feel. My question is, 1, any way to tell whether the running out of gas, and he says that in air quotes, or she, feeling is nutrition or just gone too hard and haven't trained enough? It definitely wasn't hitting the wall, as I have experienced that. Does it just come down to experience? So that's like a good first one to cover. And then we'll just read through the next one and then we'll address them. Next question is, following from above, when racing, I prefer to get to the finish having left everything on the course rather than getting to the finish line feeling like I could have gone harder. I think everybody wants to feel that way, right? It says, mentally, I could have possibly told myself to push through, but subconsciously seemed to hold back a bit in fear of a total bonk. The human body is capable of amazing things, but can you mentally push through a total bonk? Or has the available fuel just run out? And no matter how strong the mind, patience is needed till the muscles get more fuel. I know you guys have talked about pacing before, but any insights or personal tips on getting optimum ride without the option of power, best bike split, pre-riding, the course, all those things would be helpful. Enjoy the podcast. 5 stars all the way. So I guess the first point of any way to tell whether the running out of gas feeling is nutrition or that you've just gone too hard and haven't trained enough. I think you can't really separate those three.
No, we don't know.
Right? And we just simply don't know.
We can know based on if you told us like how much you ate. So if you said I had one gelled yesterday, and then I rode the race without any food.
3 blocks and a half a bottle.
Yeah. Brandon, our product manager at Carson City Off-Road.
Yeah. That was 3.5 hour ride. And half a bottle of water.
Half a bottle and 3 shot blocks.
That might have been enough.
Yeah. Enough
But
energy.
so that's how we could tell them. We'll get into a little bit more there, and then the drinking again. Like, if you didn't drink anything, you probably were limited by that. But it's always a combination of the things, right? About training, nutrition, and hydration. Unless you really nail your hydration and your nutrition, then you can think it is training. But also that could just be pacing,
Totally.
because it's not like you could have just trained more. You could have gone slower and finished slower at the beginning and finished the whole race faster, which is kind of confusing. So we don't really know without
a
some of those nice
bicycle
to-haves.
computer and
Yeah,
how much you ate.
Pretty much a power meter, we could tell.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we knew how much you ate and drank, then we could tell.
The one thing, any way to tell whether the running out of gas feeling is nutrition or just gone too hard, they're inherently related. So you know, if you're going hard, you need to fuel yourself more. And that part, you don't even necessarily need a power meter for. You can even do something like if you have a watch, or if you just, you know, try to stay diligent on this, you could basically say, like, if the course has aid stations, well, before every aid station, I want to eat 2 things, something like that. But just making sure that you're eating. You don't always have to be prompted by a number to eat, and you can still fuel very well.
Yeah.
And the point isn't just to, like, avoid the bonk. You know, you're trying to, if you're going hard, you need more fuel to perform better, right?
Yeah.
So, like, there's kind of like a difference there. And I feel like I'm going to reiterate that in a slightly different light. The point of eating on the bike isn't just to avoid the bonk. It's to improve your performance.
Yes. I feel like Nate does that so well, where you eat to go faster.
Yes.
Right? You eat purely to increase your physical capabilities.
Not to avoid blowing up.
Not to avoid blowing up.
Because that's not even, you don't even have to worry about that if you're fueling to go faster.
Yeah, there was somewhere in the forum, there was another podcast about a Sky nutritionist talking about fueling for the work performed. I mentioned this, I think, last time or the time before, where they're eating 6 grams of carbs per kilogram of body weight on the easy stages, like the flat stages. And those are like super easy for the pros.
Yeah, they're like 180 watts average.
Right?
Yep.
And that fueling for the work required at 6 grams. So how many of us, when we go for a 5-hour easy ride, I hear it all the time, people are like, oh, I came in, I ate avocado and salmon the night before, skipped breakfast, and did it on water bottles, right?
Yeah.
And then they get thrashed.
Yeah.
They didn't feel very good at the end.
I know. So for
you
them,
can-
the work required is 6 grams at that level, at pretty much doing nothing.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And something for you to think about too is the fact that, like, you may even be able to complete the ride, and you may be able to get through the ride pretty well, but that doesn't mean that you are going to get any benefit from that ride, because if you don't fuel your body well enough, it's going to be in such a state that you can't even absorb.
Yeah, so we'll get into this in a second, but people are thinking that they're trying to get better fat adaptation, and I've talked about this a lot. I like just raising your whole FTP, so the percentage of where you burn fat just goes up higher.
Exactly.
And unless you're really at the pointy end, you're at 6 watts per kilo. You can't get to 7 without drugs.
No.
Then you're like, okay, and we're doing these really long stages. Let's try to play with this right here.
Right.
I think, that's an important takeaway. If you have a lot of room on the threshold table, raise your threshold. That will raise your fat adaptation much quicker than doing fasted rides.
You'll use more fat.
150, if you raise your FTP from 250 to 280, the amount of fat that you're going to burn when you're doing an aerobic ride at 180 watts is going to be much higher when you raise your FTP.
Correct.
Even higher so much than if you were completely fat adapted. I'm not sure the math on that, but there is a section.
I know which one's easier.
Yeah, raising your threshold's way easier.
Way easier.
Than becoming fat adapted.
Yeah, exactly. There's like an established way to go through it. And you actually saw that when you were testing, that you actually utilize, you are not keto. You do not try to be keto, right? That's like not your goal.
I saw your bowl of breakfast this morning.
Yeah, it was shredded wheat and berries. 3 types of berries.
Decidedly not keto, yet you still utilize a lot of ketones.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting. From Ubiome, they have that gut bacteria. Said it right this time. Test, and this is interesting, not conclusive, but they measured how much bacteria I have in my stomach versus other populations, and I have more bacteria that process carbs than other people, like 1.5 times, which is interesting. But also, that's from like everyone, vegans, even people who are on high carb diets.
Yep.
For bacteria that process ketones and lipids, like fat, I was also, I think, 1.2 times more than low carb diets and paleo people, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, super interesting.
I don't know why that happens. I think it's probably a lot about the variety that I eat and the amount that I eat.
Yeah.
And the training. I think the training also influences gut bacteria.
Yeah. I think it's just a misconception, perhaps, that, you know, people think that, you know, if you just bring in a ton of carbohydrate, that's all your body uses and it never utilizes fat.
Right.
And it's not the fact.
And Nate eats healthy carbohydrates and a huge variety. Like, you don't eat the same thing all the time, and your body responds to that, right? Like, it's from a very basic standpoint. If you eat a lot of healthy food, your gut bacteria will flourish.
So, Sol, let's talk about the amount of carbs. We've talked this before, but I have a question. If anyone knows the answer of this, please go to forum.trainer.com, put it in there, and at me, Nate. What I've read in research is that a human body can process 90 grams of carbs per hour.
That's like the general rule of thumb we've all heard.
And a 2-to-1 ratio of glucose to fructose. The Cycling Tips article about
Mitchelton Scott.
Yes. They saw all of their riders eating between 80 to 110 grams an hour of carbs on the bike.
That's a lot.
Which is crazy, right? Like, people always think that I'm crazy for eating that much. I'm like way bigger than most of those people. Maybe every single, no, not every single one of them. There's a couple people in the Pro Tour that are my size.
But a couple.
Yeah, like a couple, right? And they're eating so much, right? So my question is that processing 90 grams of carbs the same for the whole population? Because that does not make sense to me. People have different sized livers. People do different amounts of activity. Like, can you train yourself to go up to 120?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense that 90 grams would be the limit for everybody across the board.
All the time.
Because, and you know, you have more muscles doing more work. As a result, they might demand more.
You have a bigger GI tract.
Yeah.
Right? From a very basic standpoint.
On the other side of things, you know, you're smaller, you do less work. So you just don't have that demand on your system. I don't know. I mean, it's something.
You think that the people with higher thresholds then that are bigger would be at a really big disadvantage if everyone gets fuel at the same rate, but the people with the bigger thresholds who have a bigger aerodynamic drag too have to take more of that, have to burn more of that to go the same speed.
Yep.
So what I think someone should do is a PhD or a master's thesis on this.
Yeah.
I want you to take like 6'7" collegiate swimmers, like think of like Michael Phelps, those big guys doing all this training and eating a ton. Michael Phelps famously eating 10,000 calories a day. Test this against 5'7" male, non-athletic.
Yeah,
keep the gender
like
the same.
that.
Just keep a general population, smaller person, and then elite athletes. And do they process carbs at the same rate? I really want to know that answer.
Yeah, it'd be fascinating.
Especially with a population, I say collegiate swimmers because I don't think they're maybe as crazy brained as some athletes like cyclists where they're doing all, something very special. Just eating like a variety and lots of food because they're swimming 6 hours a day.
Exactly. As we've seen with Michael Phelps, he ate a lot.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there's an answer to this that has already been done, please let me know. Because I'm so curious. And my gut says it's going to be different for body size and it's going to be trainable.
Yeah, I think it would make sense, right?
It makes sense that it's trainable.
It'd be bro science, right? It's bro science for now, but it might be real science later on.
And there's one more question here.
Yeah. So, like, one of the things that she talks about is the fact that, when racing, I prefer to give it all, but then she's talking about, being able to mentally push through and basically asks the question, like, right here, the human body is capable of amazing things, but can you mentally push through a total bonker as the available fuel just run out? And no matter how strong the mind, patience is needed till the muscles get more fuel. Yep. I think that, and I think you put this down here in the notes, Nate, but you are always governed by some degree to your brain.
Yeah, that's the current theory right now, is that you are always governed by your brain. And there's always extra. And they've tried to push people all the way where they bonk and they put electrodes on their muscles and they fire and the muscles still contract. There's still glycogen in there. It still happens.
Yeah, you can't, we always talk about the fact that, I was completely depleted of glycogen, but we're not completely depleted.
Yeah, your body's not going to kill you.
Yeah,
you're mentally weak.
Yeah, and
you can always push more.
Yeah, and your muscles might be in quite a state, right? You may have pushed them extremely deeply, and every signal is going to your brain, or your brain might just be saying, "I've had enough." And we've all felt this before because we've been in that situation. Then something has happened, I don't know, you're completely wrecked on a ride, you're totally bonked. And then a dog comes out and chases you, and you're like, wow, I never knew I could hit 1,700 watts, right? And you were in a bad way prior to that. Or, the finish line gets close enough so that you can really taste it and you really go for it. It happens. Like, you can still push yourself past it. But I will say, if you are running yourself low on fuel, your ability to resurrect, so to speak, is limited in terms of its duration. Like, eventually you'll feel that again. And I think that, so if we're talking about this, can you push through it? Yes, but temporarily. And some people are better at pushing through. And I think the higher the intensity, the shorter it will last. The lower the intensity, you can kind of keep going. And you'll see that with like ultra distance runners that can just like run for days on end, basically, because the pace is low enough. But I think you're always kind of governed by it,
By your brain.
Oh, yeah. It's always in play, no matter what. Matt's question. I'm a Cat 4, recent upgrade. Congratulations, Matt. You knocked out the 10 Cat 5 races. That's awesome.
You're still alive.
Yeah, exactly right. He says, I've noticed in pretty much all the local road races, Cat 4 to 5, the field blasts up the hills in the first third of the race, then generally settles down.
Yes.
Yep.
Welcome to bike racing.
Yeah. So especially Cat 4 to 5 racing, right? It's especially obvious on courses with multiple laps where we might average 10 to 15% more power up a 4-minute climb on the first lap than the last one or two. Because of this pattern, most of the race is done in an overly stressed state relative to, say, even lap pacing. So my question is there a benefit to mimicking this pattern in training? In other words, loading up the efforts early in the workout, particularly if you know the race will unfold in that way. So this one kind of ties back in many respects to what we were talking about with the 700-foot climb. Should I just do that same thing?
Yeah. So no. There's the short term and there's long term, right?
Yep.
So if you're maybe training specifically for this race, and this is your Olympics, you might try to mimic that pattern and so that you can feel it and do that. But especially as a 4 or 5, I'm guessing you have plenty of headroom for FTP. Yeah. That what you need to do is it's much better, and lots of numbers on this, including our own, to do those intervals repeated intervals at that same level or close to it. And just do lots of those, and then have those intervals be more or longer, either more wattage, more intervals, or longer intervals, and keep doing that. That will raise your overall FTP, and then after a while, you'll be the one pushing it for every lap and just dropping people the whole time.
Yep.
So I would not try to be 10 to 15 and then do the rest from lower.
Yeah, I don't think that that's beneficial for training either. I think that there's the opposite. There's benefit to being able to perform high when it goes on later on.
Yeah. Because you don't win the race on the first climb.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Does this happen? You lose it, though. Does this happen in the P12s also?
Yeah, and we were saying that really it's every race is hard unless you're the one pushing the pace. Yeah. So there's a couple guys where the race is easy, and for everybody, the race is hard at the beginning, and it's always hard at the beginning.
And the reason it even happens in the upper levels is you can see on the video, Pete's a big boy. They're trying to drop you. You're exactly the person they want to drop at the very beginning, all the light climbers, so that later on in the race, you don't beat them. They know they can't sustain it for the whole race. Right?
Yeah, for sure. And it's everybody's tactic. If you can thin the field on the first lap, man, like it's easy, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Your chances just went up. All the teammates went away. Probably the people that could counter your strengths are now gone.
Yep.
So it's amazing. The other thing we want to say is, how often in a race does this happen where you get dropped and it slows down like 15 seconds later?
Yep. Yeah,
Always.
exactly.
Always, right?
Yeah.
Every time.
It's always how it works, because we cut the cord one time before it, right?
Yeah.
I think that, so coming from mountain biking, this is every single race starts hard, right?
Yeah, even harder.
Yes,
even harder.
Because we're starting, or we're fighting for position, and it's something that's extremely important to do, right?
Yeah.
But that said, it doesn't take a whole lot of specific training to be able to start a race hard. And I feel like the main thing that you need to be concerned with is how hard are those efforts relative to your threshold. And if it is way over your threshold, then you're not going to last. Yeah. That's just how it goes. If you have a higher threshold, then it's going to be within reason, because it's not going to be that tough, right?
Exactly.
How important is warm-up?
Huge, right? I mean, if you're not warmed up, then you're not ready to go right in the beginning. And your RPE will just go, you're still capable of the work, but your RPE, it just goes through the roof, and it makes it difficult to be able to hold on. I was looking at Keegan's race file from Carson City Off-Road. They basically started out pretty reasonable, sweet spot-ish for Keegan, which means probably everybody else was dying.
Yeah, as hard as they could go.
But Keegan, Russell, Finsterwald, and those guys were just hanging in. And then once they got to the chip seal section with that course, basically once they got to the first steep part, right, he hammered it and they went really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, he really didn't go that hard for the rest of the race for him. It was all within his threshold, basically, thereafter, right?
You're just thinning it out.
Exactly. They're just thinning it out. And you have to, and the thing is, if you're warmed up, then you are going to adequately warmed up, then you're going to perform to your ability levels. And if you can't hang with a group, that just means that you're not fast enough yet.
Yeah, or fit enough, or however it works.
It's hard music to face, right? Or like,
Yeah.
Or as Cat 3 memes always shows, like hard pills to swallow, right? But the thing is it's cool because then you can identify, okay, that's just what I need to do.
And it happens over and over. Every time you upgrade, every time you go to a new bigger caliber race, it always kind of resettles into this same programmatic start.
And once you have this down, you can actually kind of flip things on their head because you do this at a local road race that we have that's kind of like flat and rolling until it gets to some more severe climbing.
Yeah.
About a third of the way into the race or so.
Yeah.
And when you start this race, a lot of the time you just go from the gun really hard because you know that later on, if you get caught on those climbs, or you might get caught midway through the climbs, but you can go a little bit easier through there, and then hopefully not. If you stick with the field, then they just hammer it on the climbs. You'll be spat out the back.
Right. And for me, the biggest thing is, I'm sure it's like this: if everybody's rested going into a climb and they go up a 4-minute climb as hard as they can, there's no chance I can stay.
Right.
But if everybody's tired, I don't go that much slower when I'm tired. Probably. The same.
Right.
I can only go so hard up a climb. So if everybody's tired and I kind of bring down their ceiling for a 4-minute climb, then I only lose 20 seconds over the 4-minute climb.
Yep.
And then that's doable to catch back on. But if everybody's fresh and everybody hits it, I lose a minute on a 4-minute climb, and I'm not bringing that back. So
Right. So you can kind of use it to your strength. You can look at that sort of it's just a different strategy.
The other thing is to side climb this. Got videos on that.
Oh, yeah.
Side climbing, I think I did it wrong because I side climbed in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
But to do it wrong is just, especially at the beginning, is you can't side climb back so far that there's gaps that open that you can't get back on.
Right.
But also get to so side climbing is when you start at the front, and then as everyone's going up, you're getting a little less power, so you're drifting back, and you can, on bigger races, you can save 20 seconds on a 4-minute climb.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the dream, right? If I could sag climb, if there's 100 guys in every race and I could sag climb 60 seconds of every 4-minute climb,
Yeah.
So a coping mechanism for you, if you've just realized the fact, so you just moved up, right? And you might be racing Cat 4s now that you weren't racing prior, something like that. And you've realized the fact that your threshold just isn't high enough, right? And that's why the beginning of these races are prohibitively hard. And if that's the case, just remember the one thing, and we said this before already, but it hurts for everybody. And maybe not the first guy, maybe not the first two, something like that. But even for them, it still hurts them. But it hurts for everybody. And I feel like you said, Nate, like we always give up. It feels like just like one attack too early or one effort too early. And if you can just somehow make yourself hold on through that one extra one, and if you keep doing that in races, plus you're training well, then this sort of scenario is short-lived. You're going to find yourself being the one that actually decides the pace and not too long. So,
in short, just do your intervals.
That's it.
Yeah.
Get faster. That wouldn't have been very helpful if we just told them to get faster, huh? Evan says, I see myself as a punchy rider that likes to attack over and over again in races. I'd like to win, but I've neglected my actual sprint and can't seem to get the hang of pulling up on the bars. I'm pulling up on the handlebars as I push down on the pedal, right hand up, right foot down, and vice versa, but feels like I'm just not strong enough. The bar doesn't come up and the bike doesn't want to sway. I'm briefly hitting over 1,000 watts, but I end up on the wrong side of a leaning bike. We've seen this before. Yeah, he says, it very quickly gets awkward and I have to stop to adjust or lower my power. I've tried creating the circle of power to no luck. Have you got any other tips or on sprint technique, and are there any upper body exercises I could try? So before we go into this, I just, so we talked a lot about this. Pete and I went out and we did sprints. We did research. Some might say, yeah. We did sprints. I hit some good PRs.
Did you?
Yeah,
What'd you hit?
So it wasn't peak power. The peak power was only 1,300 something, but I ended up holding 1,000 watts for almost 20 seconds, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
So that's good for me. But I want us to think of a golf swing.
Yeah.
And when he says I have to stop and adjust, if you've ever seen Charles Barkley's golf swing, that's what I'm thinking of in my mind. If you haven't seen it, you should look it up right now on YouTube.
Tucker, can you put a GIF of Charles Barkley's swing in the
that would be
forum post?
fantastic. So he comes down and he overanalyzes so much. and he's thinking of all the things he needs to do
On the fly.
every single millimeter of movement along the way that he goes through, and he stops and he hesitates and he gets stuck, and then he kind of goes back and then he comes through again.
Yes.
It's far from an elegant golf swing.
Yes.
But we're going to kind of use that as like an analogy.
Yeah, and it's funny that that's what we settled on, because we were talking with Nate, because Nate can sprint, but it's not as good as it could be.
It's true.
There's room for improvement.
I was gonna say like I can't sprint. It's more like because my sprint is just barely more than my seated sprint, my standing sprint. I think I go faster as a seated sprint because of aerodynamics.
Yeah, so that
Right.
shows that there's low hanging fruit in the standing sprint side of things for Nate,
Yes.
right? Especially because Nate has a high threshold, big person, so he should be able to put out a lot more wattage
I'm
than
not
somebody like
totally
me, right?
What's your max wattage currently?
I think all time.
Yeah.
1310. I think recently it's like 1250.
All right, so we got to change that.
Yeah,
We'll have to
I want to be
practice.
like 1500 for 5 seconds and win some races.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But
So,
yeah,
let's get into it, Pete.
Yeah, it's crazy because I will acknowledge. So the last time we talked about this on the podcast,
We got it backwards.
it was kind of on the fly.
Yeah.
And we kind of mentioned half of the important part. Now that we really did the research.
Research. Air quotes on the research.
So for me, what was really interesting is when we were talking about the pulling up, you and I both talked a lot about how there's a lot of moving targets in a sprint, if that makes sense. So over the course of a 10-second or a 20-second sprint, your technique changes from beginning to end. It also changes based on RPMs, and it also changes in the metronome swing of the bike.
Yeah, and the interesting thing though is that all these changes adhere to common principle.
Yes.
So like it's not like you reach a certain point in your sprint and you're like, I need to change. I am now at this cadence or this speed and I need to change my technique. Instead, you're adhering to a principle, latching on to the proper balance or feeling.
Right.
And then that you just change when you latch onto that and hold on to it, you change how you perform.
Right. So the best part for you, Nate, is there's actionable takeaways we have for you.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Yes. So first things
For everyone, I think I sprint the same way as I think
yeah,
90%
for sure.
of riders in a
Totally.
road sprint like me, and then there's the people that actually sprint right.
Yes. So first things first. Basically, we both found you start your sprint around 1 or 2 o'clock, right?
Yes.
And whichever leg
Just over the top for people who were looking at a clock face.
Yes. and it's whichever leg you want, whichever leg you feel like you want to start with, because it'll be different for different people.
Yes.
But when you start, and when I say start, I mean you really put a lot of force into the pedals.
And it's best to start your sprint at that time.
Yes.
Don't lead into it, kind of hit or turn it on at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
Don't lead over the top.
Yep. And at that point, when you press, let's just say that you start with your left leg. And at that point, you end up adding a lot of tension and torque onto your handlebars on the left side as well.
Yes.
So left and left.
Yes.
Right?
Wait, tension which way? Up, right?
Yeah, you're
pull.
You're pulling.
You're pulling.
We're pulling.
That's the important word, is
Yes.
pull. So it's a bit of up and it's a bit of back.
So I think I was always pulling on the other handlebar.
That might be why you were messing up.
Well, so this is the kind of interesting thing so this is what I think is almost more important than the pull, and that's why I said this last time. So while you're pulling up on your left hand this is a quarter second of elapsed time that
Yes.
you're doing this, which is very important to realize.
We're living in slow-mo world.
We're living in slow-mo world. So as you start that 1 or 2 o'clock downward sprint with your leg, you effectively pull back and up. Or you hold your handlebar in place with tension.
Yes.
Into your sprinting leg. But almost just as important, you have almost like a rock solid base
Yes.
on your right hand, keeping your balance in place and so much tension. So I did some more this morning because why not, right?
Yeah.
But my chest and arms are tired now in the podcast from the tension of holding the bike in the right place and dealing with the pull, because if you pull too hard, your bike doesn't stay. So you're actually pulling and keeping your bike in place at the same time.
I've never felt upper body being tired sprinting, not once.
Right. Yeah. Yesterday I was like, I was genuinely afterward. It hurt. Yeah.
So, and two, I thinking about it, left foot left foot 1 o'clock, start the sprint. I'm pulling up on my right handlebar. That's backwards.
That's probably why for you, we've noticed that and this is common. I bet a lot of people feel this.
Yeah.
Your bike doesn't feel like it's moving that much, and it actually doesn't move much, and your body moves more than the bike.
How many videos do we have where the racer is going back and forth, but the bike's right there?
Yep,
Do you think that's the problem? Is we're doing it opposite?
Yeah, it very well could be. And here's the interesting thing. So when we're talking about the changeover, remember that once we're talking about the left leg, once that left leg gets to the bottom of the point where adding much downward force on it doesn't really do much good, basically the bottom of the pedal stroke, your other side is already basically to 1 o'clock, and it's the same thing's ready to happen on the other side.
Yeah, and so in that quarter of a second, you go from pulling to holding the other arm as tension. So kind of the pulling goes to the other right hand, and this is so fast. So that's what's kind of mind-blowing is your body has to swap back and forth really quickly, and it's not a hard swap. It's a transition of pulling and tension to pulling and tension.
It's a constant system of faders, or you could imagine you have a string with a wheel on it, and you're basically rolling it from side to side to side. You know what I mean? That's it's not as much this arm off, this arm on. It's just a smooth interplay between the two.
So if you look at static pictures of the pros, it looks like sometimes they're pulling up opposite.
It looks like that, right?
Yeah, but is that not what's happening?
Yeah, and pictures don't translate.
That's the hard thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what we realized in our big talk about this. We really need slow-mo video.
Which I think that we are absolutely capable of, and we're going to do that. We're going to actually film Pete and Nate sprinting in the same position, the same area, right, same road, and then we'll have basically a breakdown and analysis of what you should do in to do a proper sprint. The one thing that occurred to me, like an epiphany moment, is when we're talking about how hard you pull on the bars or how hard you press or how much you lean your bike, because that question's been submitted many times. How I see some people really lean their bike, others don't. And really what it is it's all a function of you just trying to basically, the more force you put into one leg, you have to counter that with your upper body to keep the bike in control. Because if you were riding with no hands and standing up, then you just slam down as hard as you could. You just fall over, right? So really that's what you're doing is you're just creating that balance between the upper and lower body, and that's what determines it. Sometimes you'll see people lean the bike a little bit more, and a lot of the time that's to gain a little bit of leg speed because that might give them a little bit more leverage to get things moving quickly. Sometimes you'll see riders lean it less because they're really trying to keep that force and maybe push it into forward momentum.
Exactly, and I think one thing is it feels different at slower RPMs. So if you start your sprint at 60 or 70 RPMs, it's really amplified those couple feelings of pulling and holding.
And you don't even have to press that hard.
And you don't press that hard. But as you continue your sprint, the pulling gets less, the rocking gets a little less, everything kind of tightens up, but you don't lose any tension. The tension almost increases over the course of your sprint.
I even feel a lot of tension in my neck, my head.
Yeah,
it hurts
my neck
after
hurts.
I sprint.
Yes.
Because there's so much tension through the whole body.
So that's that circle of power. It should be so much tension. It's the same as if you were going to go grab a 400-pound deadlift. How much tension would you have on your body to try to lift up the bar?
Every part of you, your jaw, everything,
That's the same feeling you should be going for.
It's crazy.
So, and I think that to recap just a few big picture thoughts that I had is, number one, your main goal should be to go faster. That's the point of a sprint, right? You just want to go faster.
And look good.
Sure, yeah, of course. And it just so happens that the best way to make yourself go faster also looks cool. A sprint looks cool. I think everybody agrees, right?
Yeah.
It looks cool, a properly done sprint. So your goal is to go as fast as you can. And the way to get there is to put a lot of force into your pedals and also turn them over quickly. And that put a lot of force into your pedals part, I feel is where things start to come unhinged for a lot of folks. Just because, once again, something isn't balanced. The torque from their upper body to the torque to their lower body isn't balanced.
Correct. Exactly.
That's where it falls apart.
And everybody can pedal really hard. If you're an experienced cyclist, you can pedal really hard. And I think that's why this gets turned on its head so much, is because every ounce of power you put into your pedals, you have to hold your bike just as hard, steady, in tension.
What about pulling up? How much are you guys doing that?
So I noticed that I pull up, I would say, more if I am more upright.
Yes.
If I'm postured up on the bike for some reason or another, I tend to pull up more. If I'm lower on the bike, trying to be more aerodynamic, because that's the other goal of a sprint, but that's stuff you worry about after you kind of get the sprint down. I feel like I pull back more.
Yes, and at the beginning of the sprint, it's slightly more. If you think of like a kilo track starter, as their upper body is like pulling as hard as they can.
And they're very upright.
Very upright because you can pull a lot up. And then as soon as they are into their sprint, you're pulling up less and less. Like the curve goes down of your pull. So it starts, but it's so little. It's such a short period of time that I think that's why it's more important to think about your other hand and the full picture of pulling up and holding it there.
Yes.
And that's why we were talking about on the other podcast that you're not pulling on the opposing bar, but you're holding it with your opposing hand.
Yeah.
I pick up my rear wheel when I sprint because I pull up so much. Am I not like switching over to the down, like on the other leg fast enough?
It could be.
I don't know. I'm too far weighted forward.
I think too far weighted forward. That's one where make sure everybody's different and everybody's bike's different, but try creeping back just slightly and you can sight using your front of your stem and where your head is.
Yep. I found that it's also when I'm not timing things very well or I don't have the tension very good, I'll, be pulling up on the pedals and then it'll kind of hop up in that situation. But if I'm really focusing on technique, which that's a really good argument for doing a couple sprints before you go into a criterium, not to see how much power you have for the day, but instead just to make sure that you have the technique down. Really helps.
And for sure, start light. The same as your golf swing. You don't start hitting it as hard as you possibly can. You don't go for a full distance swing right off the bat. Do some easy sprints. Do some 300-watt sprints and 500-watt sprints, and then warm everything up. And as soon as you lose it, you can't fight it back and get it again.
Right. And I'm going to use the example of the golf swing again. If you've ever had a golf coach who has sat down, or a swing coach, and he's like sat down with you at the range and he's been going through everything, a bad coach basically says, you need to do this, you need to have your hands open a door handle, and they need to rotate all the way through the door handle operation as you come through. The club head has to strike at a specific degree. It can't be too low, too high. And then you have to make sure that you're powering through your hips. You have to make sure that your head stays in the same place. Then you have to make sure that you're keeping your head down, and then you have to follow through. It's like, it'll overwhelm you and you'll Charles Barkley the swing, right? You'll end up just stuttering your way through it. Instead, what a really good golf coach does is he puts you in the right spot, and then he says, swing. And you swing, and then after that, he says, how do you feel? And then you basically, you relay what you felt to him, and then he says what he saw, and then you go back through and he might give you one thing to work on.
One thing to work on.
Right? So we just gave you all a lot of stuff to work on, and it's hard to comprehend in a just audible form. The video should help a lot with this. But it's much more about basically, and then, so the epiphany I had when I was golfing a lot was that I got to the point where I was coming down and I felt like a good swing, like I could feel something clicked. And it took a long time of basically me trying to figure out what was going on. And it eventually took me letting go of trying to figure everything out and instead just swinging a club. And then with time, I got to the point where I was like, okay, I see what that feeling is. And then I could introduce little technique tips. But if it took me away from that feeling, I had to kind of take a step back, And sprinting, definitely, there's like a feeling of balance and tension that you get from a sprint where you're like, this is it. And that's, what you want to hold on to. It doesn't mean that you're going to be like a crazy fast sprinter.
No.
That depends on your physiology, really.
But you can be efficient and do what you're supposed to do. And a solid sprint is so much more effective than a not solid sprint. But like we were saying, do baby steps. Pick one thing and start so easy. It'll
help.
I have two more questions.
Yes.
Okay, what if oftentimes too, I'll pick up my front wheel? I think that's not uncommon. What do you do if you pick up the front wheel?
That can be really dangerous. I'd say that's
dangerous.
That's even more dangerous than the rear wheel pickup, because a lot of the time when you pick up your front wheel, there's uneven tension. So you put your wheel down and it'll be crooked, and it can cause.
That would be the worst if I just sprint myself into a crash.
Can you imagine
all by myself.
A slow speed sprint, and you like get ready for it, and you're like going like 3 miles an hour, and you just fall over. It'd be bad.
I think
far back.
Pull less up and more. Think of pulling it into yourself, like we talked about it just briefly. But if you're bending your body, so on your bike, your legs, you're kind of V'd, and so you're pulling everything into your core.
into your
rather than
hips,
straight up.
basically.
Rather than straight up.
Yep.
Because you want an anchored position to pedal into or to pedal from, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you think about it like an angle, you're really going for the corner of that angle. That's where you really want to have
And
this
so
force pulling back.
some
into
is
it.
up for sure because you have to counteract the force that your pedal is going down with.
Yeah.
But most of it is that tension and pulling back into yourself and keeping everything steady. Because if you have a ton of pressure and tension on the bike, there's no way anything is going to come off the ground.
And this is I'm probably putting my hands too low on my bars. Like, you know what I mean? Like way down far.
Yeah. So that makes it so that you're
Pulling
at more
up.
of a severe angle and you have to pull up even
Yeah.
more. If you look at a lot of the best sprinters, their hands are not on the drops. Their hands are not at the bottom of the drops.
kind of-
Their hands are actually kind of high on the drops, and they're like tucked underneath.
Because you're pulling more into yourself than up. One last thing is elbows further out than you. As a cyclist, we're so trained to just be super narrow, and that's the smooth way to pedal and everything. But as a sprinter, pop your elbows out.
Can you talk about the circle of power for those who haven't heard it before?
Yeah. I think the most interesting way to think about it is that's that tension we're trying to find. So if you have your hands up closer to your hoods, right, not on the bottom, and you're pulling your bars kind of apart, but it's
Apart and back.
apart and back, and then like engaging everything between your hands
Imagine that there's a loop between your handlebars, your hands, and it goes around your arms, up through
into
your
the
chest,
back of your neck.
back of your neck, your ears,
Yes.
and then back down to your hands. And it's that ring right there.
Yeah, and my jaw hurts after sprinting sometimes, right? So,
Yeah, straight
so-
up.
So
Yesterday hurt.
as you you want to have so much torsion on your upper body that nothing can move. And then from there you can kind of initiate the sprint, but you want to have so much tension holding your upper body exactly in place, and everything should feel engaged, like your forearms, your biceps, your chest, your back, and everything. And you can even practice just that feeling. You don't have to sprint with that, because it's something that, like, we're trying to give you 50 things to do at once. Get the circle of power down and get that first initial hard pedal stroke down. And then, like we were saying for you, let's get 3 hard pedal strokes in without losing the circle of power and without like mistiming, because we don't want to teach you any bad habits. But the circle of power, I would say it's all about as much tension as you can put in your upper body with pulling your handlebars apart and being with your hands in the right position.
Yep.
Last problem that I think at least Tucker and I have, we run out of it feels like we run out of resistance. So it feels like we want to shift.
Yep.
Like the very beginning feels good, and then it's like all noodly. What do you shift? Not shift? What goes on?
Before the shifting part of things, if anybody wants to feel what it's like, if you're like listening to this and you're like, I'm a great sprinter, this is all silly stuff. It's just natural.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Nice job.
Good for you, number one. And then number two, sprint at a really high cadence, and you'll start to feel everything fall apart with like low resistance. And then you'll know what it feels like. Because I think it's really hard to keep the tension, because once again, we're trying to balance the tension between your legs and your upper body, right? So if there's not a lot of tension provided by the fact that you don't have a lot of resistance, you don't need as much tension in the upper body. And if you're carrying more in the upper body, then it just gets really awkward.
And you're passing the tension back and forth faster at a faster RPM.
So it's harder to keep track of it.
keep taps on.
So yeah, you shift, absolutely. I think that shifting is something that you should learn after you start to feel the technique, right? And you feel the right feeling, and you start to feel balanced on the bike, and you start to feel like you're not, unstable. At that point, then you work on shifting, because shifting throws off everybody. I don't care if you're Mark Cavendish, the best sprinters in the world, shifting still throws him off. Like that's what happens.
Yeah.
It's the enemy of a sprint in some regards, but it still lets you go faster. So I guess it falls in line.
And so some of those guys, they're already sprinting in their 5311, right? Like tour sprinters, they're already going 40 miles an hour. So you're in your 11, so they don't have to worry. It's all about winding it up. But us regular Joes, you start at 25 miles an hour, and then you sprint to 35, or it depends. So you have to shift. We did talk about it. It's another fine tuning thing where you barely unweight so I'm a left leg leader. So I start my sprint with my left leg. I also shift when my left leg is coming over the top. So I barely back off a half a pedal stroke. The second half of my pedal stroke on the right leg, I have sprint shifters, which are awesome. So I just hit my thumb and start the shift. And what you can do is you're not coasting. You're still using the same 95 or 100 RPMs, but you don't have a bunch of torque on the pedals. And as soon as it clicks in, which is...
It depends.
It
If you have
depends.
ETAP, you never know. Real fun. Yeah.
But you wait for the solid thunk,
Yep.
and then you can get back into it. So if you time it right, you don't really miss out on a real pedal stroke. You miss out on the second half of your weaker side's pedal stroke.
Yeah, so it's like it's kind of, if you drive a manual transmission in a car, you know how you have the gas on, then you let off the gas, you engage the clutch, and you grab the gear. It's the same principle, because if you keep pressing on the pedals and then you really jam a gear, number one, it will be jarring to your body if it does grab the gear, and you'll interrupt your ability to be able to keep pushing it, or it snaps in your chain like Pete, or it falls in between the gears like you've had recently, which is scary.
DI2 Durace with sprint shifters, and I've heard before you can shift under load, so I was sprinting, just hitting that button. And,
Wham, bam.
Yeah, and then you get this, all the tension goes away.
Yeah.
And that's
Scary.
a good way to crash.
Totally.
I've seen Jeff Linder do this a couple times where he will sit down to do the shift.
Sometimes
and then he gets back up. He just did it in another video, because you can see from the shadow that he did that. And I
on
think
a
he
long
got
sprint,
second.
on a long sprint where you're not like right in the final sprint to the line, but if you're getting close to the line, you don't want to be sitting down to sprint.
Definitely
or to shift.
Those first 5 seconds of sprinting, don't shift. Be in the right gear for your first real explosion, and then you're tired. I mean, 5 seconds of sprinting as hard as you can is hard. And honestly, that half a pedal stroke also feels kind of nice, where you ease off just for barely anything, hit the shift, and then you can kind of double down and go the last 10 seconds.
Looking at his power, his NorCal cycling videos, it almost seems like he gets a second explosion when sits down for a second and shifts, and he gets back up, and then his power goes bam again.
And he might be consciously doing that, right?
I don't know. Jeff, to let us know.
I found that when I start a sprint really hard, I can always after 2-3 seconds into the sprint, I can double down and do more. I start it really hard and I almost lose a bit of focus or something, and then I can recommit and I can do more almost every single time. And you'll see on the sprint, it basically goes peak and then it kind of valley, then goes up even higher. So, and that's probably because I'm not very good at, I'm not like a pro sprinter or something.
Yeah, and everybody's different, but
The last point that I think we should share on this is warming up your upper body is not a bad idea before you do sprints. It can even be just lean against your truck or your car or something and just do some push-ups or a wall, on the wall even. You can get down and do some, sure, but you can just do it like that, just to because we don't often use our upper body as cyclists, right?
Push-ups for sure.
It's a good idea to do.
It's a good idea. Yeah. The one thing I did try on my mountain bike this morning, it kind of, the big wide bars, so I have 800 mil bars, it really exacerbates the feeling of the pulling and pushing, and everything's slower. So if you can kind of get adjusted to the feeling on your mountain bike, that's a good start. The other thing is going uphill keeps the tension high.
And it allows you to make sure that tension is always present, so then you can latch onto that feeling.
So with the tension in the pedals, you can keep the tension in the upper body, and you don't that kind of fade off, like you were saying, where you lose everything. So find a nice 5% hill and start easy. Do these at 600 or 800 watts, half speed, just like you would with a golf swing. You half speed, and then you can turn it on from there.
Absolutely. Good tips, Pete.
Oh, thanks.
We'll have a video coming out on this. We're actually going to be filming it next week, and then we'll get it out to you guys as soon as we can thereafter. So look forward to that. Jack's question, he says, Jonathan, what is your bike setup going to be for Leadville? And are you going to use the Maxxis Aspen tire? And if so, what size? Good luck. I figured this is a good opportunity, Nate, for me to run my equipment setup by you, because you've done this before.
Yes, let's do it.
Okay, so I was hoping that Maxxis was going to come out with a file tread Aspen sooner rather than later, that we've seen on Nino Schurter's bike and a few of the other ones, but apparently they just have genuinely, they just have a few of those tires. So,
Nino's tires.
Yeah, basically like Nino. So I'm definitely not going to have have access to that. So yeah, I'm gonna be doing the 2.25 Aspen, the normal one that we all have. And I thought about maybe going for something a little less
What's
knobby.
the Aspen
even.
like?
Yeah, so it's so it has defined side knobs and it has a very open tread pattern, meaning that there aren't a lot of knobs in the center. And if you were to just like smash the tire down on, or if you were to put the tire in ink and then smash it on paper, like the footprint you'd see, there's a lot of casing, just like the roundness of the tire, that it has a lot of contact with the ground instead of just a bunch of knobs. So it has basically like little chevrons in the center, and then it has occasional knobs throughout. And those little chevrons, I feel like it's a really fast rolling tire as a result. I also feel like a bonus about it is since you get so much casing touching the ground, you actually get a pretty big contact patch for what the tire is. And that seems to make it pretty predictable in terms of how it slides. It doesn't have the greatest lock-in traction, but it's very predictable. And that's a really good trait in the tire that you want. So it rolls quick. It's 120 TPI, which is also really good. So that means it's got a supple casing. And I'm definitely planning on running the EXO. You can get them without EXO, but they're really hard to track down nowadays. But I'm definitely running EXO just because a flat at Leadville would be like a day ender.
No.
So you don't think so?
No.
I feel
A lot
like
of people get flats. You just fix it and go.
Catch up to everybody you were with.
got it. I just need to fix it and go.
It's not a day ender though. You can still.
It would be.
It's not like you're gonna miss your 9-hour cutoff time.
Yeah, I feel like it
for
would
you.
just let out a whole lot of steam. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yeah,
But
it'd
even
be rough.
Chrissy Wellington had a flat in Ironman, fixed it without even having CO2 until someone came by, and she still won.
Yeah,
So-
she's impressive.
I know. So
Yeah.
Jonathan, you can.
Just be like Chrissy.
Yeah,
Sounds
exactly.
good.
And that's a similar time though.
Yeah,
8
that's
to
true.
9 hours.
Yeah, that's true. I guess you have a good point. I mean, if it's a short track race, it is a day ender. If it's
Yeah.
in Leadville, it's not. Yeah. But I don't want a flat is the point.
Yes.
And I think that running the EXO protection doesn't put me at a severe penalty, and it basically guarantees, or doesn't guarantee, knocking on wood.
Yeah.
But it makes it a lot more of a sure bet.
So for me, my experience, Leadville is a gravel race that has spots that can cut your tire. So you
Yeah.
have to like kind of balance that. And I was so surprised by the amount of like people running lots of grip tires.
Yeah, like knobby tires.
Knobby tires, I know. And I had a very, so I had a Thunderbird in the back and a Racing Ralph in the front.
Yep.
That was probably, like, for me, that was good. But for other people that were more skilled, I think they could have gone even more. I think in the top pros go really
Yeah.
light tread.
I saw somebody on a single speed last year with a Minion DHR2 up front, which is basically a sand paddle. It's like an anchor. That's basically what that tire is. It does not roll fast. It's not
Yeah.
meant to. And a high roller on the back. The person was basically like, it sounded like a dirt bike going down the road. It must have been a miserable day.
Yeah, that I mean, it's a very, if we're to believe rolling resistance tests, that's like probably an extra 40 watts that you're pushing.
Oh yeah, for sure. You can notice it if you've ever ridden like an enduro bike or anything else like that, and you're pedaling on road. You're like, oh my gosh,
This is awful.
who has a rope around me that's pulling me back? Yeah, it's rough.
So at people do drop bar bikes. I think, Jonathan, you could seriously do Leadville on a gravel bike. I wouldn't, but you could.
Yeah.
And then the tires that I would kind of think that could be good would be the Vittoria Terreno 40C tires.
Yeah, they have that like hexagonal pattern in the middle. Then they have some side knobs.
Yeah, and that's like, what is that one? What is 40C? 1.75?
Yeah, I think so. Right around there.
So, I mean, it's for dry conditions, which, unless it rains, it's dry and like dusty. I've done that myself on my mountain bike at like Lost and Found and the Tahoe, the Sagan Fondo.
Yeah.
Which is kind of similar conditions and kind of the similar technical. It's kind of like Lost and Found. That's how I would say the technicality of Leadville is.
Yeah.
So that's why the whole mountain bike thing with a little bit of or Grinduro. Did you Grinduro?
Yeah, no, I didn't do that.
Kind of
no.
like Grinduro too.
Yeah, but I'm familiar with that terrain. So
That's kind of what it's like.
That's what it seemed like from spectating. Obviously, I didn't get to. I was just at the aid stations, but that's what it seemed like with spectating too. So, I might end up running those Terrenos. I know that Ryan Standish, friend of the podcast, he runs them in short track races, and he's actually run them in some XCOs as well. And the only time it didn't work well was when it rained. But other than that, he said it's actually really good. And he's a bigger guy, so he runs that tire because he's like, I need marginal gains on my side since I'm a bigger athlete if it's like a lot of climbing.
I'd just be worried about flats, but you're pretty good at placing your tire in the right spot.
Yeah, I'm picking lines.
Yeah, rather than just I call Pete the juggernaut for mountain biking.
Just point and then go.
It's suspension. That's what it's for, right?
Right.
Yeah, I might end up doing that. I feel like if you're running, and there's the inverse relationship. If you're running a capable bicycle with suspension, you might be able to get by with a lighter duty tire.
Yes.
If you're running, a drop bar bike or something that's a hardtail or something like that, you don't want to skimp on the tires because it's just going to pass more force through them.
Yeah, you would be. I mean, I think that tire is so much faster than a mountain bike tire.
Yeah, I bet.
I
think
especially
I might do
on the gravel parts of it and the Columbine climb and.
There's the other temptation, since I'll be out there in Colorado for a week, I could just pick up and open the Yeti Cycles Edition open while I'm there at HQ.
Test ride it. Test ride both.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you ride some single track on a cross bike?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's a little bit of single track, but not anything.
I might end up trying that because that could be fun to do that one.
That could make, so you're not looking forward to this race, and that could make you look forward to the race.
Yeah, it's something interesting.
Vittoria on the open and just smash it.
Yeah.
All aero gear.
And you could think of like when you could push it.
I know. It'd be great, right?
be
On
great.
the roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although if I'm on the roads, that may just separate me from people and make me work alone.
No.
Ooh.
There's people that are faster than you.
Yes. Like this is noticeably true.
Yeah, but I mean, there will be at Leadville. So if you can get into a group like that, where
Right.
it's the, someone just said, you mentioned Keegan as a drinking game.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree.
But
We
there's
should do
people
it.
that are, 360 FTP, and
Yep.
you ride with them with a 320, but
Yep.
you're on your cross bike.
Yeah, totally.
You should try to do that. That would make it way more interesting.
That'd be interesting.
And
would
then
be
just bring
really
lots of
fun.
flat repair stuff and lots of plugs in case you get it.
I'd probably just run Eagle Axis on it.
Yeah, you might want to do a 2-bike. Could also be good because Powerline is so steep and Columbine is so steep in places, but then you could really push it on flat stuff.
Yeah, because I'd have a 1050 in the back. But yeah, I
like
could.
a 40.
Yeah.
I've got an Access group set in my office.
Yeah, and I have
The ETAP?
and I have an Axis derailleur and cassette, so I could just swap it over.
I have it all. Not the mountain bike one, the road one.
Well, you can.
Yeah, I don't
you
want to
can-
use the road group.
Okay.
You could double dip, right?
But I can double dip. I can pair those shifters over.
Yeah.
Cool.
Super
Oh, yeah, you
interesting.
can use my shifters with the. Oh,
Yeah.
perfect. You got it.
Oh, cool.
This is gonna
This
be way
has
more
made a lot
fun.
more fun.
This is interesting.
And then we'll see, but based on your experience for all these people,
Yeah.
like what would be faster. And just the only thing is like that, it's the sidewall slice.
That's the thing.
That's the thing I'm scared, but yeah.
If you wear a backpack, you could actually have a spare tire.
Yeah, spare tire, boots, that sort of stuff.
Just bring a spare tire.
Let us know.
Bring a spare tire.
Yeah, down in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, let us know if I should run this bike. Let's get a poll
Yes,
going.
for sure.
100%.
Or a mountain bike, and then what my setup should be. Or if you're listening to this, go to forum.trainerroad.com and let us know.
Can you put a dropper on it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
do that. Put a dropper on it.
Yeah.
Put the Access. Oh, no, you can't do that.
I can't do that one.
You'll figure out some way.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll find it
There
out.
could be one where just a little button.
Well, with the shifters.
Okay, you don't need to do aero bars, though.
Yeah. What do you mean?
Aero bars on the gravel
Oh, you
bike.
mean like extensions?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing
Yeah,
that.
okay,
No,
good.
no.
I don't think you would.
Jeff Kabush would kill me, right?
Yeah.
He would disfriend
He
you.
doesn't like those. Jerome says, this is Jerome. I started as a weekend rider for a year, and I decided to take my training to another level and found your app in the web. Been using Trainer Road for about 2 months now, and I started a low FTP around 148. And after 2 months of training using General Build, my FTP increased to 188. Nice job, man.
Yeah.
Says, my question is there a certain level of increase of FTP every month wherein you can consider it as adequate increase or a failure of the training? I felt very strong on the bike since I started your program, and I just want to clarify if I'm on the right track to fitness. Thank you.
Oh, this is a hard question to answer.
We've looked into this multiple times.
I don't want to give away anything,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
someone's going to do this
Yes.
with artificial intelligence.
Let's move on.
Here's some of the factors. Right now we don't know. There's just so many factors.
Yeah.
Your training history, how much did you work out as a kid, right? That's going to have a huge thing. Your age, your gender, who your parents are, the volume that you've been doing, both recently and historically, your nutrition, your sleep, your stress at work, all of these things.
Natural ability.
How mentally tough you are.
Oh, yeah.
All this stuff is going to be put into it, and so we don't know.
It's
Yeah.
just
Basically
flat
it.
out.
Yeah,
Because we've looked at this before on our end, and we see some people will see a massive increase because maybe they trained a lot way back when, and then they're just getting back into it, right? So they can see a lot of quick gains. Or
Matt
the
Lieto.
opposite. Yeah.
He started out, he said it on a podcast, fat kid, didn't do any training, but he's got that real good parent genetics with Chris Leato being his brother too.
Yep.
And he went like super fat, like 2 years
Skyrocket.
pro level.
Yeah. Really impressive.
And I'm not pro level. You could put me through the exact same stuff that he did, and I would not be pro level.
Yeah. You'll progress at different rates. And that's just kind of, kind of what it is,
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people, like, we expect it to be just straightforward. And I'm actually guilty of this a lot of the time. I tell myself that nobody's different than me, right? Like, it all comes down to how hard we work. And then I use that to drive myself to train and do all that stuff. But in the end, I do have to face the music. There are people that are different than us. Some people faster, some people slower.
And you can't just apply a magical number like you're supposed to do this much per month per work. It just doesn't work like that.
Yeah. I think Carson City Off-Road rider actually brought that up to you, right?
Yeah, and so it was interesting. I'm sorry I forgot your name. Whoever talked to me at the first aid station said that his podcast idea was have people talk about their what their FTP was when they started, kind of their training history and what they got to, just to give everybody a range of what they can expect and how different people respond to training. So we just jumped into it with us, right?
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. So we looked at all of our levels, which I'm going to share the link. Producer Tucker will I'll share this link with you to my first 20-minute test. You are all going to laugh because you'll get to see terrible pacing. So we'll share a screenshot too, so you can see that or something like that. But anyways, my first FTP test was with Trainer Road, and it was after 1 year of riding, and it was in 2013, and my FTP was 230. And at that point, I was still stronger, so I still had motocross strength.
How much did you weigh when you raced moto?
I weighed 170 pounds almost.
Dang.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And you're 142 right now?
147.
Okay.
Yeah.
You'd be it. You would look more like Simon Clark.
Yeah. Yeah, which, by the way, doppelganger alert there. But yeah, so at 230 is where I was at. How about you, Pete?
So actually, Nate and I, my first FTP test, I did at Indoor Power at Chad's.
We might have been together.
We were together. I think we were the only ones in the class, at least from
Our bikes were next to each other.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah. And we did a 20-minute test. I had been riding for about a month or a couple months, something short. But that was my first power meter, first test, first everything. And I think I did 240 for 20 minutes, which is about 225, 228 FTP.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I went harder because Nate was next to me.
I bet. Where were you at, Nate?
So on that one, I had been training. I think I had like a year of triathlon. I was about to do a marathon, my first marathon, and I believe I did a 235 FTP as my first one. I remember I did beat you. This was the
you were pretty satisfied.
235. I was like, oh yeah, this is amazing. But I think a better comparable of this is when I've taken time off for either kids or building business. My off the couch FTP of like a year of no aerobic endurance is 189 with a weight of like 200 pounds. So now. I said I was going to do the ramp test, but I didn't do the ramp test yesterday. I did a big 2-hour workout instead. Yeah. I'm going to raise to 350 up at 4,500 feet. 4,500 feet. And today I weigh about 192. I've been lifting weights, so my weight went up. And doing DEXA Friday, fat's gone up too. But I got plenty of time. Cape Epic's way far away. But that just shows you I'm pretty much double the watt kg and almost double the FTP.
Yeah,
pretty soon I'll be double the FTP. So there is room for people, and I'm not a natural athlete. We did our VO2 max test. I'm lower than you, Jonathan. Couldn't run the first mile in elementary or middle school, run the first 200 meters and walk the rest.
You didn't grow up being super athletic.
Did marching band. I did swim team for like a year and a half, but I was in the very slow thing, and I think my best 50 time was like 30 seconds. Like in high school. So it was not good.
It's probably faster.
Maybe it was 32 seconds.
Yeah.
And I think I'm actually about the same. Watts per kilo, I doubled pretty much because I've done 405 or 410 when I'm really fast, and that was probably at 180, 185. So, I mean,
there's room.
There's room.
And you're not, like, you have a special high VO2 max. Have you done a test?
I have a low VO2 max, actually. I think it was 59.
Wow.
So
gives a lot of people hope.
Yeah. I'm not that I am an anaerobic athlete, but I am not a VO2 max athlete. And I think that's just from years of racing crits. But even diesel, like I have diesel power, but my threshold power isn't there either. So
Yeah. Yeah. So we all start at a different rates. We all progress at different rates. And that's just kind of how it is. So last question. This one's from Carl. Then we'll get to the questions you submitted on YouTube live. It says, hi guys, love the podcast. I've only been listening this year, but I've pretty much done the entire back catalog now. That's a lot of work. That's to be commended. That's a training program in itself. It says, I signed up for Trainer Road in January and initially tested at 241 watts. I felt like that was below what I could do and retested a few days later at 246 watts. Having completed Sweet Spot Base 1 low volume, I retested at 261 watts, which I was pretty happy with. At this point, life intervened and I've had a couple of aborted attempts to get back on the horse since. My question relates to motivation. I've been road cycling now for almost 10 years, and in that time, I've never had problems with motivation to ride or train. That's pretty good, a 10-year run. That's impressive. I've lived in the Middle East for the last 4 years, and this time of year I have zero interest in riding outdoors with a temperature permanently north of 40 degrees Celsius. I find myself missing the Grand Tour roads of southern Spain and the time I lived there, and even the freezing winter rides of UK. So yeah, I can totally understand that. Just riding outside in that sort of heat would be oppressive, all the time. I simply am not feeling the love at the moment, and I have a goal to podium in the Masters National Championships here in December. I rolled in 13th last year, and I know I can do better. This isn't going to happen, though, if I don't ride my bike. I've taken some time off, but I'm still really struggling. He says, my pain cave's set up and ready to go at a moment's notice, so that isn't any sort of an obstacle for me. The bike is permanently on the trainer, the AC is always on, bottles are in the fridge, etc. So everything is set. He says, I just hate that I don't want to do the work. It's making me feel angry and bad about myself, and I really care that I don't care. I'm desperate to break the cycle and start enjoying and looking forward to training again. Any advice or suggestions are greatly appreciated. Even your great race analysis vids aren't doing it for me at the moment, despite having devoured them all. Just keep watching them, it'll work. It says, thanks, hopefully, Carl from sunny Qatar. So this one really revolves around like getting motivation back. But I think that he's been going for 10 years.
Yeah.
He did Masters National Championships. It's coming back around in December. I feel like everybody needs a break from time to time, right? I mean, you, Nate, need a break from time to time?
I have forced breaks for travel. So recently I have not needed a break and I just get upset. But I did when I did. So I've had this experience training for an Ironman where I did it too early, did too much training, and then I didn't eat enough. You just get so worn down, and 2 to 3 workouts a day, it just gets a big, huge drag. So what somebody's told me on Slow Twitch was take a week off immediately, right now. And I did, and I felt better.
Yep. Yeah, just completely, don't feel...
be okay with it, though.
Yeah, don't feel bad about taking the time off. Because a lot of the time when we take the time off, then we just go, I'm just putting myself further behind. So that's kind of a hard thing to handle.
I have... Nate doesn't struggle with motivation. I do. I think this, I always get the June doldrums where it's really hard for me to get on the bike, and you've just been training for 6 or 8 months, and it's hard. So I always take a couple weeks off. You're not going to lose that much. It doesn't really matter. If you're going to stay in that state where you hate training and you hate that you don't want to train, you're never going to come out of that magically.
Yeah. It doesn't. And even I've seen people hate training, then they have a good result. And that's temporary. Their motivation that comes back as a result is temporary because, you're just running yourself into the ground. It can absolutely happen. I think that the other part of it, too, is you have to make yourself not feel guilty for not wanting to train in the first place. It's natural and okay to feel that. And as soon as you can get over that point, then I think it becomes more okay to be able to take time off. But it's okay not to feel extremely eager to get out and to do a hard workout every day.
Yeah.
That's okay.
I personally need a goal.
Yeah.
So something I want to do that I work for, and then I enjoy the process. If I have no goal, I'm like, what is this process for? I know, Carl, you have a goal for nationals, but just already my wife's like, I'm probably driving her crazy because of Cape Epic. It's 2 years away, but you've seen on Strava, Nate Pearson.
Subtle plug.
I'm trying to do 2-hour trainer rides every time because I think that's something I need to be able to do for in the future. And you do a bunch of 2-hour trainer rides and it's it's kind of tough. But then I feel, and this is something that can help, and this helps actually with people with depression, you do the things you don't want to do. So when I finish a 2-hour workout, I feel amazing. In our forum, there's cycling memes, and there's the picture of the cycling star who's got her arms like this, like when you finish a big workout. And that's what you feel like. It's amazing. And then I chased that feeling multiple times of doing something hard. And it feels better when you don't want to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Which is amazing, right?
Right. Because you overcame yourself, right?
Exactly, yep. And it feels more like an accomplishment. So that part's okay. But before we go to the last things, Jonathan, the four things I think are that can hurt motivation: nutrition. If you've changed your nutrition recently, if you're trying to losing weight, oh man, everything. You're angry at everybody. Everyone's
I feel like you almost have to set expectations. If you're trying to cut weight and keep the training load high, you kind of have to set expectations and say, I'm probably not going to enjoy this as much as I normally do. Like, because otherwise it's overwhelming.
Depression can totally, this happens to a ton of people. They don't work out because they're depressed. So check that out. Sleep, if you're getting less sleep, it's going to mess with your motivation. And then stress at work, sometimes, or family stress. You don't think these are impacting your motivation to train, but they are. Where you're just so much in the fight or flight all day long, and then you get home and you're like, all I want to do is watch TV. Like, right? I don't want to get on the bike because your adrenal system has been so up and going all day long. Then you get sleepy and tired, and it's like this vicious cycle because the next day's more stressed because you're tired from the day before, and everything then is harder on you. And then if you're trying to lose weight at the same time, it's harder. And then you're like, of course I don't want to get on the bike and train. So if you can fix those things, the motivation might come back automatically.
I think another thing is you might not just take a total break off of riding bikes if you don't want to do that, or even coming back from that, or if you have just plenty of time before an event. It can be really refreshing to just work on specific skills or weaknesses that you haven't addressed before. Like maybe you're not a sprinter. Maybe focus on sprinting for a bit. Maybe you're not a time trialist. Focus on that for a bit.
And it doesn't, then you don't have to have these lofty goals. You can just bite off small chunks. You're like, I'm gonna practice sprinting twice this week. And that's it. I'm not worried about anything else. No rides other than 2 30-minute sprint sessions.
Pete's smiling inside right now. I can see it. He's like, this sounds great.
I could get back in right now. And I think that if there's somewhere you miss training, think about a training vacation.
That's a good point. Go back to, like you said, to Spain and go back to that spot and kind of to reignite. I mean, just like it's something that you'll see a lot of couples do in a relationship, right? Where they go to some place where to re-spark the flame.
You and your bike.
You and your bike, go to a place where you re-spark the flame.
This is also what some couples do. Probably not telling the other person, but is to buy a new bike and try a new
flame,
a new sport. So maybe not in Qatar like Carl, because it's so hot, but if you're burnout on road, try mountain bike. If you're burnout on that, try road, or try triathlon. It's a whole new challenge. Try cross.
Or track. I mean, maybe there's a velodrome. Something, right?
The change, though, or even a different type of racing. I'm going to focus on crits, or I'm going to focus on winning from the sprint in crits. Is different than gravel races. It's different than road races.
Now, if you feel like it's a recurring thing and it happens sooner than it should, and you want to dissect why you're losing motivation, I think it really comes down to that nutrition, depression, sleep, stress, right? Like the stress that you have from your job or from your family or from any other thing that you have, the stress that training puts on you, and if that's affecting everything else, you have to kind of reconcile all of that and put it back in balance. And man, I really do think that nutrition is behind this a lot more than a lot of people think. If you're just not eating good food and you're not eating a lot of food, it's really hard to train because everything in your body is saying, I can't do this, right? So you need to fuel it. Let's go into some live questions that have been submitted via YouTube. And
there's a lot of them.
Oh, there's a ton. Somebody says, any track episodes or track-related programs? I assume you mean training programs so far. Many thanks. So we don't have any episodes that are specifically devoted to track racing. We did go down and ride the velodrome, but it was for aerodynamic testing. So I would love to do like scratch racing, something like that, match racing.
Maybe we should get a Trainer Road velodrome.
Yeah, we should just build a velodrome.
I've thought about that.
So Nate genuinely has. He was honest with that. So we haven't done one on that. And we don't really, the closest velodrome that we have is about 3 hours away from us. Maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Like 3.5 hours. So it's pretty close to Specialized HQ in that area. So, yeah, not a whole lot of track racing that we've done. And as far as training programs, forgive me. Actually, Chad really has recommended many times if it's a short duration event, track racing event, that you actually do the gravity plan.
Yeah.
And that can be a good option. Short power build is beneficial for that sort of a thing as well. Really, you just want to look at the duration of what you're going to be putting out and then train for that sort of duration. And you can find that in our plans.
Do 3 quick fire questions.
Cool.
Someone asks, any workouts to increase VO2 max? Yes. If you go to either our app or the website, there is a VO2 max filter. You can get all the VO2 max workouts. But in general, a training plan would probably be better than that.
Yeah.
Second question, when can we expect workout integration with Wahoo head units? We are working on that right now. Don't have an ETA, but we have the max amount of throughput of engineers working on that. So it's a high priority, and we'll let you all know when that happens. And someone else says, how can I get super fast with little to no work? Drugs.
I was just going to say there's an established pathway.
Yep.
But that said, also, most people that are doping that sort of stuff, they're doing a ton of work too, at least that we see on TV, right? It's not like
you can't get super fast.
Drugs if you only take drugs, you actually don't get that much faster.
Exactly right, yeah. EPO will make you great at sitting on the couch maybe, I don't know.
So there's no way. The little to no work,
It takes work.
Yep. And the most efficient for time is you do structured interval training, and then you have to add volume from that. But so that the low volume would be our plans would be the most efficient way. Combining that with drugs, which you shouldn't do, would be the next level. But don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Another guy says, why would doing sprint work make my FTP drop 40 watts? I buried myself doing a specialty plan and I'm having trouble coming back from it. What to do? So I bet that this is an example of false attribution or misattribution in the sense that, so actually stepping back even further, there's probably no reason to do an FTP test during a specialty phase.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Because you're not trying to move that needle at that point. Instead, what you're really trying to do is just, basically hone or sharpen the blade, so to speak. So you really don't need to do a ramp test within that time frame.
And there's a lot of, who knows, right? Sleep, nutrition, all these things. It's
your FTP shouldn't drop in the specialty phase. And a lot of the time when people take a RAM test, something like that, they just are doing it with varying conditions, like you said. And then that happens. Sprint work isn't going to... Now, if you, for months, just quit doing any sort of sustained work and you just did sprint work, yes, you would see your sustainable power drop. That's just how it works.
And if you did 6 months of TT training and then did 6 weeks of pure sprint training, yes.
You'll see a drop.
But I don't think...
Yeah, that's probably not the case.
Probably not the case.
So, you just have to keep track of nutrition, have to keep track of hydration, you have to keep track of your sleep and recovery coming into things, and the training load that you have.
And think about what you made yourself better at during your specialty plan.
Yes, because sometimes, honestly, I would take, and if I'm doing cyclocross or something like that, and if getting the repeatability I need means a decrease in FTP, I'll be all about it. It doesn't matter. I'm really chasing performance. And that's what those specialty plans aim to do, right? We raise that FTP through the base and build phase, and then the specialty phase, we really focus on what you need for the event.
Gavin asks, what is your take on the rolling resistance between using tubeless tires and latex inner tubes? So I've looked at this a lot, and I've seen 2 reports. One is they're basically the same, or that tubeless, you get a watt or 2 improvement. So for me... tubeless is as good or better, but then you also get the flat protection of tubeless. So tubeless all day long.
Yeah.
Tubeless for life.
Oh, yeah. Same. Pete likes to run latex tubes, and it also happens to coincide with an amazing amount of flat tires.
Correct.
You get so many flat tires.
Many flats,
so
right?
I will say, I didn't flat for a year, so I saved them all up, and now I flat with you guys.
That's how it works.
Yes, tubeless is easier, but I've sliced on that ride.
I've seen that.
Anyways,
Yeah.
I think it's bad luck.
And
true.
I didn't tell you this, but on my first ride with the TL 5000, the Continental 5000, GP 5000 TLs, hard to say.
Yeah.
Remember I sliced it?
Oh, yeah.
with them?
Slice that thing bad.
I went back and I saw what I hit,
Yeah.
and I hit it's like a piece from a car, a sharp metal edge.
Yeah.
So it would have sliced
It was going to slice anything.
Anything, yeah. And it was a huge slice. So I felt bad. I put it on Strava like this happened, but I should have gone back and looked at it, especially with a new tire. Because if it's a razor blade, don't worry about it, or a piece of glass.
Yeah.
It's not that the tire's like fragile.
Yep, absolutely.
So they're not indestructible.
Right. Charlie says, if I'm looking to boost my FTP, would it make sense to just stay in base and build? So you'll probably see more gains to a certain extent there.
Depends how close you are to your
genetic limit. And one thing to be said too is I find that sometimes a specialty plan can kind of be like a reset or a break, and kind of allow you to do something different and then still accrue fitness and maybe even kind of increase your ceiling, so to speak.
There's enough VO2 work in our base and build, especially sweet spot base 2, that you'll get a pretty good mix. And especially then if you switch around on different builds and you do maybe not sustain build but short power build, you can go for pretty much forever on those. If you're not racing, you just want to just try to raise your FTP.
Yeah.
How do I know when the best distance or time to start a sprint in a crit race?
Oh, that's a good question.
That's a good one. Everybody's different, and everybody has a optimal amount of power and time they can do. So Nate is 50 seconds, I think, or somewhere
a minute,
a minute longer. John's about 20 seconds. Really, I'm about 10 seconds. So what I always do is measure out about 200 meters before the finish line and pick out something to sprint from. So if it's a heads up sprint, then I know that that's when the optimal time for me to go. Like Nate always attacks into the last corner or 2 corners to go.
Shut up.
Sorry. Nate's going to start wearing different kits so you guys can't recognize him.
Yeah, you'll never know it's him.
What I'll do though is I'll look at a YouTube video of the race before, last lap, so they're going fast. I'll figure out where the finish is, and then I'll go back a minute or 50 seconds, see that part of the course, and that's a possible go point.
Yeah. So pick the right one for you.
Yes. Let's see. This is a really popular question that we get from a lot of people, and the answer is it depends, like all great questions and answers. But he says, what plan would you recommend for increasing fat utilization? And that's so basically the one thing that you can do to use more fat is if you do more work, you'll actually burn more fat as well as you'll burn more glycogen in most cases. It's not just like one thing turns off, right? While your glycogen utilization may go up, but it's standardly, the standard answer is if you do lower intensity work that doesn't put as much demand to bring in a bunch of glycogen, then you can increase fat utilization. However, it isn't that way across the board for everybody. It isn't just like a simple blanket answer, and it may have different effects on people.
Yeah, there's a question asking, I want to burn more fat to lose weight, or I want to be more efficient and gain and burn more fat as I
think that the latter, increasing fat, right? Yeah,
increasing fat,
or for giving increasing, not getting fatter, but increasing efficiency and utilizing fat.
Yes, so that's going to be a mix of, you could go about it different ways, and I've already said my way, but you could do the traditional base plans, go fat adapted. Maybe your FTP stays the same, but the percentage of where you burn fat's going to raise up.
Yeah.
Or you just raise your FTP, be able to race everything, have a great life, eat all the food, and be, in general, a faster racer. The only times I wouldn't do that is if, you're a RAM rider or something crazy like that, a 24-hour rider, I would totally be looking at fat adaptation. But first, I would try to raise my FTP up really high.
And then start working on the fat adaptation.
Exactly, yep.
Because it's going to make for better performance.
Yep.
And kind of along these lines, I've seen, this one kind of hits a nerve, because I've seen a lot of people talking about this lately where it's you use way too much glycogen. And within, and people say that they get a test, it used way too much glycogen. I have a problem, right? And I don't use enough fat. And it's look, everybody's going to utilize glycogen. And if you use a ton of glycogen and your performance is great,
yeah, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter as long as you're fueling properly, right? Now, really what they're tying that into is they're saying that's markers of aerobic capacity and how that ties in, and everything else. But the fact is, you can take the traditional base approach. I've done that, and I actually see hardly any adaptation in terms of increased fat utilization in terms of perception. I haven't measured it.
And a lot of the time that's it's 1 or 2 or 3% shifts.
Right, it's not a massive shift.
It's not a massive shift, so that's one other thing to think about.
A massive shift usually happens if you're fully fat adapted, and hard to do.
Yeah.
Evan asked Pete, how many push-ups can you do? Or, do you do push-ups? How many?
We had a small contest here at work a couple months ago where we did max amount of push-ups in 60 seconds, I think, and I think it was about 40 or something about there. Which was not the best. And we also did pull-ups. Chad actually won the pull-up contest, which was pretty awesome. And there's a lot of young, fit individuals here. Yeah. And Chad just strolled. He's like, "What are you guys doing?" And then he's like, "Sure, I'll take part." And
Austin wasn't there. We have employees that could.
We've mentioned Chad's pull-up capabilities in the podcast before.
Sorry.
He's no, it's fine. He's mentioned that he could do like 40 something, I think is what he said.
I don't know, but we're gonna have a rematch.
Yeah, because we need to see him do 46.
I got a couple
think
other
that's what he
employees
said.
to go against.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, one more question. Let's pick one here. Okay, what's the best way to improve cornering if I'm time crunched? I have 2 babies and a wife at home, so I can't spend a ton of time outside.
Drills really is the way I would think about it. Great one that we've done at team camp is you set up 2 cones close to one another so that the bike, it's pretty much one bike length apart, or it can be a broom, it can be anything, 2 milk jugs. It doesn't really matter. The idea being you start at a slow speed, start at 5 or 10 miles an hour, and make the turn in between the cones. So set it out in your street. And the goal is to hear your tires sing, is what we say. And that means you're probably going 25 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour.
Getting close to the edge.
Close to the edge, and you'll feel and hear kind of this grip of the tires. So, but the difference between taking them at 20 and 22 makes you better than most people in a race. Barely anybody can take it at 25, and even the best racers don't get to that place all the time. You just want to get comfortable at 10 or 20% faster than you're used to.
Something I could add to that you can do while watching the 2 babies at home is YouTube videos where you watch MotoGP, Formula 1, and ski racing.
And
because those sports will teach you about perfect line choice. And if you can listen to Formula 1 cars and motorcycles, you'll hear how they start to add the power and when they do, and you'll realize that it's a lot smoother than you think. It can be really helpful.
And so finally looking through the corner that you're trying to go fast, with that same drill, look where you want to go, not where you're going.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And remember, you can join us on YouTube, forgive me. And we're going to move forward just doing it on YouTube from now on instead of splitting it between YouTube and Facebook. So you can all come over there. If you are watching it on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up. It really helps. We'd like that. And subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening to this on whichever podcast you're listening to, please give us a rating and share the podcast. That would be super helpful for us. If you want to get faster, once again, go to trainerroad.com. We'll see everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.